You've been lied to about sleep. They told you it's just rest, just shutting your eyes, just another routine part of life. But if that were true, why do so many people wake up tired? Why do you wake up feeling like you never really rested? Like your mind is already racing before the day even begins? The truth is, sleep isn't just about the body, it's about the mind. And if the mind is restless, no amount of sleep will fix it. If you go to bed with stress, with regrets, with distractions pulling you in every direction, you don't wake up refreshed, you wake up weaker. But there's another way. For centuries, the greatest minds in history, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, unlocked the secret to deep, powerful, life-changing rest. Not through comfort, not through indulgence, but through discipline, clarity, and control. They knew that the way you enter sleep determines the way you wake up, that the thoughts you allow at night shape the person you become in the morning. Tonight, as you listen, something will shift. The noise in your mind will begin to settle. The weight you've been carrying will start to disappear. You'll feel lighter, clearer, more in control than you have in a long time. And when you wake up, you won't just feel rested, you'll feel unshakable. This isn't just another audio to help you fall asleep. This is a reset for your mind, a recalibration of your thoughts, a transformation waiting to happen. Are you ready? Let's begin. Before you close your eyes tonight, ask yourself this: did I live today with purpose, or did I waste it? The way you end your day matters more than you think. The final thoughts you allow into your mind before you drift into sleep don't just stay in the night. They shape the person you wake up as tomorrow. If you go to bed with regret, fear, or anger, those emotions follow you into the morning, poisoning your actions before the day even begins. But if you sleep with clarity, discipline, and peace, you wake up with power. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They didn't treat nighttime as a simple break from life. They saw it as a sacred practice, a moment to sharpen their minds, let go of what didn't matter, and prepare their souls for whatever the next sunrise would bring. Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius didn't waste their nights in distractions or anxiety. They trained their minds to master rest, to release unnecessary burdens, and to strengthen their inner world before they slept. And if you want to wake up with the same level of mental control, you must learn how to do the same. So, before you fall asleep tonight, before you let your mind wander into useless worries, let's take a journey into the ancient world and uncover how the Stoics prepared their minds before bed. A practice that can give you deeper sleep, sharper focus, and a life free from nighttime chaos. The way most people approach sleep is completely wrong. They see it as a simple shutdown of the body, something automatic and unimportant. They eat whatever they want before bed. They let their minds drown in stress. They scroll through endless distractions, and then they wonder why they wake up exhausted, frustrated, and weak. The Stoics knew better. They understood that the hours before sleep are not a time for carelessness. They are a battlefield, a battle between control and chaos, a battle between clarity and confusion, a battle between a sharp mind and a restless, weak one. Seneca often wrote about the importance of reviewing the day before bed, not with guilt or regret, but with a clear and focused mind. He saw nighttime as the perfect moment to strip away illusions, to examine his actions, and to make peace with anything outside of his control. Instead of letting the mind spiral into useless thoughts, he directed it. He asked himself what he did well that day, where he let emotions take over, and what mistakes he made that could be corrected. This wasn't self-punishment. It wasn't overthinking. It was control, a way to clear the mind before sleep so that no unneeded weight followed him into the next day. Most people carry their failures, their frustrations, and their grudges into their sleep like a heavy bag. They let regrets fester. They replay embarrassing moments. They drown themselves in thoughts about things they cannot change. The Stoics refused to live this way. They let go, not because they didn't care, but because they understood something critical. Mental baggage weakens you. What good is it to replay a mistake if it cannot be undone? What use is regret if it leads to no action? What purpose does anger serve if it does not make you stronger? Every night before sleep, they practiced release. They acknowledged their mistakes, learned from them, and then let them go. They did not allow negative thoughts to infect the deep, restorative state of sleep. And this is where most people fail. They don't prepare their minds for sleep. They carry emotional weight. They let external problems control them, and they drown in thoughts that do nothing but make them suffer. The mind, like the body, must be cleaned before rest. Marcus Aurelius took this even further. He would remind himself before bed that he might not wake up the next day, not as a morbid thought, but as a practice of clarity. Why would he waste his last moments of the day in anxiety? Why would he end his night with meaningless distractions if that could be his final memory? He used this thought not to create fear, but to bring deep appreciation to the present moment. Most people live as if they have unlimited time. They waste their nights because they assume they'll always have another. But the Stoics knew tomorrow is never guaranteed. So they treated their final thoughts before sleep as sacred. And when you think this way, suddenly things become clear. That petty argument you had today no longer matters. That mistake you made is done. Learn from it and move on. That problem you're stressing about is either fixable or beyond your control. Either way, it doesn't deserve your night. At the end of the day, your mental clarity is more valuable than any pointless thought your mind tries to hold on to. This is why Seneca would remind himself that sleep is a rehearsal for death. It is a moment of surrender, a time to let go, a practice of accepting life exactly as it is. If you cannot clear your mind before sleep, how will you ever learn to clear it in the middle of life's greatest challenges? If you cannot control your emotions before you rest, how will you ever control them when it truly matters? The Stoics knew that rest was not an escape. It was training, a nightly test to see if they could release the day, accept fate, and embrace peace. And this is exactly what you must do. Instead of filling your mind with distractions before bed, fill it with clarity. Instead of letting stress consume you, practice mental discipline. Instead of allowing sleep to be chaotic, make it a time of true inner preparation. Here's how you do it. Set a boundary. The last moments before sleep should not be polluted with nonsense. No social media, no random videos, no news, no useless conversations. Your final moments dictate to you the energy of your rest. Protect them. Empty your mind. Before bed, write down anything troubling you. If it's a problem, put it on paper. If it's an unfinished thought, record it and set it aside. Do not carry it into sleep. The mind is not meant to be a storage unit for unresolved thoughts. Clear it. Reflect with purpose. Do what Seneca did. Ask yourself what you did well, where you failed, and what you can do better tomorrow. And once you've answered, release it. Let it go. Carry nothing unnecessary into the night. Choose your last thought carefully. Don't let it be fear. Don't let it be stress. Don't let it be regret. Make it something powerful. A Stoic phrase. A reminder of your strength. A single thought that will guide you into sleep with peace and resilience. Because how you enter sleep determines how you wake up. This is how the Stoics prepared their minds before bed. Not by accident, but with discipline. Not with weakness, but with control. Not with fear, but with clarity. And if you learn to master your nights the way they did, you will wake up stronger, calmer, and more prepared for life than 99% of people around you. So tonight, before you close your eyes, ask yourself, did I prepare my mind for sleep, or did I waste it? The choice is yours. Every night as you lie in bed, there is one silent thief that robs you of rest, focus, and peace. It creeps into your mind without warning, fills your head with endless worries, and keeps your body tense even when you close your eyes. That thief is time, or more accurately, your fear of time. You worry about what tomorrow will bring. You stress over what you failed to accomplish today. You replay conversations, regret choices, and dread the future before it even happens. And then you wonder why you can't sleep. The Stoics understood something most people ignore. Time is an illusion when it controls you, but a tool when you master it. They knew that the mind, when left unchecked, either runs to the past, digging up things that no longer exist, or leaps into the future, fabricating problems that haven't even happened. This obsession with time is why most people never feel at peace, not during the day, and certainly not at night. The way you experience time determines your ability to rest. If your mind is tangled in regrets from the past, sleep becomes a battle. If your thoughts are consumed by the uncertainty of tomorrow, your body remains on high alert, unable to relax. The Stoic approach to time is simple. Let go of what is gone, stop fearing what has not arrived, and live fully in the only moment that is real, right now. Most people treat time as if it's something they own, something they can manage and control. But time is not in your hands. You do not own the past. You cannot bend the future to your will. Yet, despite knowing this, most people spend their nights mentally living in places that do not exist. They hold on to guilt from things they cannot change. They create stress about events that may never come to pass. And in doing so, they destroy the only moment that actually belongs to them, the present. Seneca warned about this very mistake. He wrote that people complain about how short life is, yet they waste most of it worrying about things outside of their control. He compared this to a man who complains about hunger while throwing his food into the fire. Most people spend their days and nights enslaved by time, wishing for more of it while carelessly squandering the time they already have. And this is why so many struggle with sleep. They are not resting in the present. Their bodies may be in bed, but their minds are elsewhere, reliving an argument, fearing a future problem, regretting a lost opportunity. Sleep does not come to those who are tangled in time. It comes only to those who make peace with it. The solution is not to try to predict or control the future. The Stoics understood that the future is unknown and will remain unknown. What will happen tomorrow? No one can say. Will everything go as planned? Maybe. Maybe not. Will disaster strike? Perhaps. But no amount of worrying will change the outcome. The time spent in fear is time thrown away. Epictetus taught that you should never suffer in advance. If something bad happens, face it when it comes. If something good happens, enjoy it in its time. but to let your mind suffer over things that are not even real yet? That is madness. He said that people torture themselves with imaginary fears, creating a life full of misery before anything has actually gone wrong. When you lie in bed at night and let your mind race through endless scenarios, you are feeding a fire that does not need to burn. You are choosing to suffer twice, once in your mind, and once if the event ever actually happens. The wise man does not do this. The wise man lets go. The wise man accepts that time moves with or without him, and that the only thing worth focusing on is what can be done right now. Sleep improves when the mind is rooted in the present. If you want deep rest, you must first train your mind to stop running in circles. The mind will always want to wander, to replay conversations, to rethink choices, to stress about tomorrow. But just because the mind pulls you does not mean you must follow. You must redirect it. The way to do this is through practice. Before bed, instead of letting thoughts spiral, guide them back to now. Ask yourself, what is real at this moment? The past is not here. The future is not here. What exists right now? Your breath, the quiet, the feeling of the blanket over your skin, the rhythm of your heartbeat, the air entering your lungs. That is all. That is reality. And that is where your mind should stay. This practice of presence rewires the brain. It stops the endless pull toward places that do not exist. It creates a sense of calm that allows the body to truly relax. The Stoics did not waste time fantasizing about the past or future. They grounded themselves in what is, and because of that, they could rest without struggle. Another reason the Stoics were able to sleep well is because they did not fear the passing of time. Most people suffer from a deep anxiety about time slipping away. They worry about aging. They dread the passing years. They panic at the thought of wasted time. But time is not the enemy. Time is simply what is. It moves, and it will always move. The more you fight it, the more you suffer. The more you accept it, the more you can use it wisely. Marcus Aurelius saw time as something neutral. He reminded himself that death was simply a natural process, no different from a leaf falling from a tree. He did not fear time running out because he did not see time as something to be kept. You cannot keep time. You can only exist in it fully. And when you do that, fear dissolves. At night, when you start feeling anxious about how little time you have, about the years passing too fast, about all the things you have not done, stop. You are wasting the present by fearing what has not yet come. The only way to make time count is to be fully alive right now. The fear of time is what makes people lose it. But those who stop fearing time begin to live in it properly. Letting go of the obsession with time does not mean becoming careless. The Stoics were not reckless. They planned. They acted wisely. They made decisions that honored the future. But once they did what they could, they let go. They did not waste their nights dwelling on what was outside their reach. They knew that at some point, thought must stop and action must take its place. For those who struggle with sleep because of stress about the future, this is the answer. If something is within your control, make a plan, take action, and then let it go. If something is outside of your control, recognize that thinking about it serves no purpose. Let it go. If your mind tries to create scenarios of disaster, remind yourself that these are not real. The only thing real is now. This is why the Stoics could sleep well. They did not waste energy fighting time. They embraced it. They understood that they could not hold on to the past or predict the future. All they could do was live this moment fully. And by doing that, they freed themselves from the mental chains that keep most people restless at night. Tonight, when you lie in bed, notice where your thoughts go. Are they pulling you to yesterday? Are they dragging you into an uncertain tomorrow? If so, stop. Pull them back. Return to the only thing that is real. This moment. The breath, the warmth, the quiet. The mind will resist at first, but over time it will learn. It will settle. It will rest. And so will you. Because the only way to truly master time is to stop fighting it and start living in it. When you stop fighting life, life stops fighting you. The reason most people struggle with sleep is not because their bodies are tired, but because their minds are exhausted from a battle they refuse to stop. A battle against things that have already happened. A battle against things that might never happen. A battle against reality itself. But there is no victory in resisting what already is. There is no peace in fearing what is yet to come. The mind that fights against fate is a mind that will never rest. The Stoics understood this truth, and instead of resisting, they chose to embrace. They chose to love fate. They chose amor fati. And that is the lesson now. How do you let go of the battle? How do you drop the weight of regret, the fear of uncertainty, the endless need to control what is uncontrollable? How do you close your eyes at night with the kind of peace that no external event can shake? The answer is in amor fati, the unconditional acceptance of everything that happens, exactly as it happens. There is no greater cause of suffering than the refusal to accept reality. Most people do not suffer because of what happens to them. They suffer because they refuse to let go of how they wanted things to be. They wanted success, but failure came. They wanted love, but loss arrived. They wanted certainty, but chaos appeared. And instead of accepting it, instead of seeing it as part of a greater design, they resist, they fight, they torment themselves with what could have been, what should have been, what must not happen next. This is why nights are filled with restlessness. The mind does not know how to let go. It clings to old wounds, repeats old mistakes, and drowns itself in useless fantasies of changing the past. But the past does not change, and the future does not bow to worry. So what does the wise mind do? It embraces. To practice amor fati is to take everything that has happened and say, this too belongs. This pain, this failure, this setback, it is not a mistake. It is a part of the path. It is part of what must be. The wise do not reject events simply because they are difficult. They do not see misfortune as an enemy. They do not waste their nights reliving moments that cannot be undone. They accept, fully and completely, that everything has arrived exactly as it was meant to. Epictetus taught that every event is like an arrow that has already left the bow. It is in motion, and no amount of resistance will change its course. The only choice is whether to suffer over its flight or to step aside and let it pass. Most people choose to suffer. They hold on to events long after they are gone. They replay conversations in their heads. They curse their misfortunes. They dread what is next. But what would happen if instead they stepped aside? What if they embraced whatever came, not just with tolerance, but with love? Seneca believed that true peace comes not from avoiding hardship, but from aligning oneself so deeply with fate that even pain is seen as a gift. He did not wish for things to be different. He did not lie awake at night, regretting the past or fearing the future. He understood that the only path to freedom was to love everything that happens, as if you had chosen it yourself. The mind that resists fate is a mind that will never know rest. The mind that loves fate, fully, deeply, without hesitation, finds peace no matter what happens. At night, when thoughts begin to spiral, when regret rises, when anxiety pulls at your chest, remember this: you do not control fate. You do not dictate how life unfolds. You never have, and you never will. But you do control whether you fight it or embrace it. You do control whether you spend your nights in resistance or in acceptance. You do control whether you let go or continue carrying a burden that has never served you. To let go does not mean to be passive. It does not mean to give up. It does not mean to stop caring. It means to stop suffering over what already is. It means to stop believing that life owes you a different outcome. It means to stop torturing yourself over what is out of your hands. When the mind finally understands this, when it stops trying to rewrite the past and predict the future, sleep comes easily. No more clenched jaw. No more restless tossing and turning. No more waking up with the same exhaustion that was there the night before. Just peace. Just deep, undisturbed rest. Just the kind of sleep that only comes to those who are not at war with the world. Marcus Aurelius practiced this every night. He reminded himself that whatever happened during the day, whether it was success or failure, praise or blame, comfort or suffering, it was already written in the book of fate. He did not need to review it endlessly. He did not need to cling to it. He did not need to let it poison his rest. His only task was to accept it, to love it, and to wake up the next day ready to meet whatever came next. Most people try to control life as if it was something predictable, something they could manipulate and bend to their will. But the truth is, control is an illusion. The only thing you control is your reaction. The only choice you have is whether to resist or to embrace. The weak fight against the waves. The wise become the ocean. If you want to sleep like a Stoic, if you want to wake up without the weight of yesterday crushing your spirit, you must learn to love every part of your fate, not just the good, but the bad, not just the wins, but the losses, not just the joy, but the suffering. All of it is yours. All of it belongs. All of it is necessary. Before you close your eyes tonight, before you let your thoughts wander into regret, before you fill your mind with pointless resistance, ask yourself one thing. What if I accepted all of this? What if I stopped fighting? What if I loved my fate exactly as it is? And when you answer that question, truly, deeply, watch how your body softens. Watch how the tension disappears. Watch how the weight that has been crushing you lifts as if it was never there. And then, finally, let go. Letting go of regret is not enough. Accepting fate is not enough. You can release the weight of yesterday, embrace everything that happens, and still find yourself lost in the same mistakes if you do not take time to reflect. If you do not examine your choices, your thoughts, your actions, you will repeat them. Fate may be outside of your control, but your response to life is entirely in your hands. And without careful self-examination, you are no better than a leaf carried by the wind, drifting aimlessly from one day to the next. Most people do not review their lives with honesty. They either drown in guilt, punishing themselves for their shortcomings, or they avoid responsibility altogether, numbing themselves with distractions. Neither leads to growth, neither leads to wisdom, neither leads to the clarity that allows a person to wake up stronger than they were the day before. The Stoics had no interest in self-pity or denial. They sought truth. and the only way to see the truth of one's life is to write it down. Marcus Aurelius did not keep a journal to entertain others. He did not record his thoughts to impress an audience. He wrote to himself, for himself. He examined his own mind, his own weaknesses, his own failures, not to wallow in them, but to understand them. He did not let his thoughts remain abstract. He put them onto paper where they could be seen clearly, where they could no longer hide in the shadows of his subconscious. And because of this, he did not make the same mistake twice. The unexamined mind is chaotic. It repeats errors, holds on to useless emotions, and deceives itself into thinking it has learned when it has not. Writing forces the mind into order. It forces truth to the surface. It eliminates excuses. It strips away illusions and lays reality bare. When thoughts remain inside the head, they remain unchallenged. They loop endlessly, repeating the same patterns. But when thoughts are written, they are exposed. They cannot lie. This is why the Stoics journaled at night. The day, with all its distractions, was not the time for deep reflection. Only in the quiet of the evening, when the world was still, could they look inward without interruption. They would take stock of their actions, not from a place of guilt, but from a place of learning. What did they do well? Where did they fall short? What could they improve tomorrow? They did not ask these questions to dwell on failure, but to ensure that each day was a step forward, never back. Most people let their days pass without reflection. They make decisions, say words, take actions, and then they move on as if none of it matters. But what is a life without awareness? What is a day without lessons? How can a person expect to grow if they never stop to examine where they are going? Journaling is not a luxury, it is a necessity. It is the act of sharpening the mind, of training it to see clearly, of holding oneself accountable. Without it, progress is slow, if it happens at all. Seneca believed that every night should end with a review. He saw it as a way to settle the mind before rest, to ensure that sleep was not disturbed by unresolved thoughts. The unexamined day is a burden. It lingers in the subconscious, nagging at the edges of the mind, keeping the body tense even in rest. But when the day is properly reviewed, when its lessons are acknowledged and its failures accepted, the mind is free. Writing down thoughts is not about creating perfection. It is about creating awareness. It is about seeing the self clearly, without delusion, without ego, without justification. It is about recognizing the small errors before they become great ones. It is about catching weakness before it turns into habit. It is about preventing a life from being wasted in mindlessness. There is no need for long entries, no need for beautifully crafted words. The purpose of nighttime journaling is not to impress, but to clarify. It is to capture the truth of the day while it is still fresh, before memory distorts it, before the mind tries to make excuses. It is to take stock of what is, not what one wishes to believe. One sentence of honest reflection is worth more than 1,000 words of self-deception. One moment of true self-awareness is more valuable than a lifetime of avoidance. Those who do not review their lives cannot change them. Those who do not examine their thoughts cannot improve them. Those who do not see their weaknesses cannot correct them. The mind must be trained to face itself, to look inward with the same discipline it applies to the external world. If a man does not know his own nature, how can he expect to master it? If he does not observe his own patterns, how can he break free from them? If he does not question his own actions, how can he ever become better? The truth is uncomfortable, but it is also necessary. Writing forces a person to see themselves as they are, not as they wish to be, and this is why most people avoid it. It is easier to ignore flaws than to confront them. It is easier to pretend growth is happening than to actively work on it. But the Stoics did not choose the easy path. They chose the path of mastery. And mastery begins with self-examination. The act of writing is an act of taking control. It turns vague emotions into concrete realities. It turns fleeting thoughts into lessons. It turns unconscious patterns into choices. When something is written, it is real. It can be studied, dissected, understood, and once it is understood, it can be changed. Each night, the Stoics would sit in silence and put their thoughts to paper. They did not do this to relive their mistakes, but to learn from them. They did not do this to punish themselves, but to refine themselves. They didn't do this to dwell on the past, but to ensure a better future. Most people do not see the value of this practice because they believe life moves forward, regardless of whether they reflect or not. But what they fail to see is that a life without reflection is a life without progress. To move forward blindly is no better than walking in circles. To act without awareness is no different from repeating the same mistakes forever. Journaling is not about the past. It is about the future. It is about ensuring that each day builds upon the last. It is about preventing small errors from turning into great failures. It is about removing the chaos from the mind so that sleep is undisturbed, so that the subconscious is not burdened by unresolved thoughts. Before sleep, the Stoics emptied their minds onto the page, leaving nothing unexamined, nothing hidden, nothing ignored. And because of this, they did not carry regret into the night. They did not wake up with the same burdens they had the day before. They allowed themselves to begin each morning with a clean slate. The habit of journaling is the habit of self-awareness, and self-awareness is the foundation of wisdom. Those who do not know themselves are controlled by forces they do not understand. They react, they repeat, they struggle without knowing why. But those who take the time to examine their thoughts, their actions, their patterns, they gain control. They break free from unconscious habits. They correct their course before it is too late. They live with purpose instead of drifting aimlessly. Tonight, when the day is ending, when the mind begins to race, when sleep feels distant, take a pen and write. Do not let the day go unexamined. Do not let thoughts remain tangled in the mind. Do not allow yourself to wake up tomorrow as the same person you were today. Look at your actions without fear. See yourself with clarity. Accept what is and decide what must change. And then, having left nothing unresolved, let go. Rest deeply, knowing that no moment has been wasted. Knowing that each day is a step toward mastery. Knowing that you are not drifting, but deliberately moving forward. Self-reflection is not enough. Writing the truth is not enough. Seeing mistakes clearly is not enough. Awareness alone does not create strength. It only reveals where strength is lacking. The next step, the step most people avoid, is preparing the mind for what it fears most. Most people live as if tomorrow is promised, as if suffering will always belong to someone else, as if life will continue to give them what they expect. And when reality does not match their assumptions, they break. The untrained mind collapses under hardship. It panics when faced with loss. It is paralyzed by uncertainty. It shatters when life does not go according to plan. But it does not have to be this way. The Stoics trained their minds to expect the worst, not out of paranoia, not out of pessimism, but because the mind that has already walked through the fire does not fear the heat. Negative visualization is the discipline of preparing for loss before it happens. It is the act of confronting disaster, rejection, pain, and death, not when it arrives, but before it arrives. The weak refuse to think about these things, pretending they will never come. The strong prepare for them long before they do. The mind that has already accepted the worst will not be caught off guard when it comes. The heart that has already grieved what it loves will not break when it is taken away. The person who has already faced failure in their mind will not collapse when it happens in reality. The Stoics did not wait for suffering to find them. They met it on their own terms. At night, when the world is quiet, when distractions have faded, when the mind is free to wander, most people let it drift into useless worries. They think about what they wish they had done differently. They regret. They overthink. They fear things that do not matter. But the Stoics used this time with purpose. They did not let their minds run wild. They directed their thoughts toward what mattered most. They trained themselves to face what others avoided. They forced themselves to see what they were most afraid to lose. And in doing so, they removed fear from their hearts before life could ever take anything from them. Seneca would lie in bed at night and contemplate losing everything. He would imagine poverty, exile, ruin. He would picture himself stripped of his wealth, his comforts, his reputation. He would see himself in chains, in sickness, in death. And when he woke up, he felt lighter, not heavier. He did not wake with dread. He woke with gratitude. Because he had already lost everything in his mind, he saw how fortunate he was to still have it. The bed he slept in felt softer. The food he ate tasted better. The air in his lungs felt like a gift. He did not take life for granted, because every night he had already practiced losing it. Most people avoid thinking about worst-case scenarios because they believe it will bring suffering. But the truth is, suffering comes from not thinking about them. When hardship arrives and the mind is unprepared, panic follows. When loss comes suddenly, grief is unbearable. When failure happens unexpectedly, confidence is shattered. But when the mind has already lived through these moments in advance, they hold no power. The person who has rehearsed loss does not break when it happens. The person who has already faced their worst fears in their mind does not hesitate when they become real. Negative visualization is not about expecting disaster. It is about being prepared for anything. It is about training the mind to be unshaken, no matter what happens. The person who has practiced losing everything is not owned by possessions. The person who has faced rejection in their thoughts is not controlled by the opinions of others. The person who has already accepted their own death does not waste time living in fear. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that he would lose everything he loved. He did not do this to make himself miserable. He did it to make himself strong. He told himself that his loved ones were mortal, that his life was temporary, that his position and status could be taken at any moment. This did not make him careless. It made him grateful. He loved more deeply because he knew he could lose. He valued every moment because he understood how few remained. He lived fully because he knew without a doubt that one day he would no longer live at all. Most people believe happiness comes from avoiding negative thoughts, from pretending bad things will never happen. But this illusion makes them fragile. The first time they face real loss, they collapse. They don't know how to handle failure because they have never let themselves imagine it. They don't know how to move forward after pain because they never prepared for it. They suffer more, not less, because they refuse to train their minds. Negative visualization is the antidote to weakness. It removes the element of surprise from suffering. It strips fear of its power. It eliminates hesitation, panic, and despair. The person who has already stood at the edge of the worst possible outcome in their mind is not afraid to face it in real life. The person who has already died 1,000 times in thought is not afraid to live fully now. The person who has already lost everything in their imagination does not cling desperately to what they have. At night, when the mind is clear, when distractions fade, this practice must be done. It is not about wallowing in darkness. It is not about creating unnecessary suffering. It is about preparing for what is inevitable: the loss of wealth, the end of relationships, the failure of plans, the betrayal of those you trust, the death of those you love, your own death. These things will come, whether you think about them or not. The difference is, the prepared mind meets them with strength. The unprepared mind meets them with terror. When done correctly, negative visualization does not create despair. It creates freedom. A person who has already imagined themselves stripped of everything is no longer controlled by possessions. A person who has already visualized their greatest failure no longer hesitates to take action. A person who has already accepted their mortality does not waste time on meaningless things. Every night before sleep, a choice is made. The mind can either drift into useless regret and anxiety, or it can be directed towards something useful. The Stoics chose to strengthen their minds when others chose to escape reality. They walked through fire in their thoughts, so that when the real fire came, they did not burn. They prepared themselves for loss, so that when it happened, they were not destroyed. The goal is not to become cold or emotionless. The goal is to become unbreakable, to wake up stronger than before, to appreciate everything while it is here, not when it is gone, to stop wasting time on trivial fears, and to start preparing for what truly matters, to be able to say, no matter what happens, I have already faced this. I am ready. The weak avoid thinking about pain. The strong train for it. And when the worst day of their life comes, when fate takes away what they love, when suffering arrives without mercy, they are not surprised. They do not fall apart. They do not drown in fear. They stand firm, prepared, unshaken, because they have already lived this moment before. Strength is not built in comfort. The mind does not become unbreakable by avoiding hardship, but by facing it without resistance. Those who practice negative visualization prepare themselves for life's worst moments before they happen. But there is one struggle that does not wait for the future, one battle that arrives uninvited, disrupting peace, robbing energy, testing patience: insomnia, the inability to sleep, the restless mind that refuses to quiet, the body that remains tense long after the day has ended. Most people treat sleeplessness as an enemy, something to be fought against, something that must be conquered. And because they resist it, because they demand that sleep come exactly when they want it, they suffer. But the Stoics did not resist. They did not fight against reality. They did not make war with their own bodies and minds. They accepted sleeplessness with the same discipline they accepted every other challenge in life. Most people believe that sleep is something they control, that if they follow the right steps, if they obey a perfect routine, if they force their minds to calm down, rest will come on command. But sleep is not an obedient servant. It does not arrive just because it is desired. It does not respond to force. The more it is chased, the more it escapes. This is why the mind races when sleep does not come. Thoughts pile on top of each other. The clock is checked again and again. The frustration grows, and soon the body is filled with tension. the mind is consumed by anger, and sleep becomes even more distant. But what if sleep was not necessary? What if lying awake at night was not a problem to solve, but just another event to accept? The Stoics understood that suffering does not come from reality itself, but from the refusal to accept reality. The man who cannot sleep and accepts it remains calm. The man who cannot sleep and resents it makes himself miserable. The event is the same, but the experience is entirely different. A restless night does not destroy a person's health. It does not take away their strength. It does not ruin the following day. What ruins them is the belief that it does. Seneca wrote that people exhaust themselves more with their thoughts than with their actual hardships. A single sleepless night does not break a person, but their own thoughts about it, the frustration, the complaints, the fear of exhaustion, these are what drain them. They convince themselves that they are ruined, that tomorrow will be unbearable, that something terrible is happening. But what is really happening? Nothing. Just time passing. Just a night with less rest than usual. Just a temporary inconvenience, made worse only by the mind's refusal to accept it. Insomnia is not an illness. It is not an emergency. It is not a crisis. It is simply a moment in time, and like all moments, it will pass. But those who resist it, those who demand that their bodies obey them, those who see it as an attack rather than a natural part of life, they turn it into suffering. Marcus Aurelius did not believe in clinging to comfort. He did not believe the body's desires should dictate the mind's strength. If sleep did not come, he did not dwell on it. He did not waste energy wishing for something that was not happening. He simply used the time. He allowed himself to think, to reflect, to embrace the quiet of the night without frustration. And because he did not resist, because he did not label wakefulness as a problem, it was never a source of distress. The modern world teaches people that sleep is fragile, that missing one night of rest is disastrous, that insomnia is an enemy to be fought with medication, routines, and obsessive concern. But history is filled with strong men and women who slept little and yet achieved more than those who obsess over every hour of rest. The belief that sleep must be perfect is what makes it a source of anxiety. The moment a person accepts that they can function without it, that their body will recover naturally, that nothing terrible is happening, their suffering disappears. Epictetus taught that control is an illusion. People are not in control of their bodies, their environments, or their sleep cycles. What they control is their reaction to these things. The man who cannot sleep but remains calm suffers no more than the man who sleeps soundly. The one who cannot sleep and lets his thoughts spiral, who believes he is being harmed, who sees it as a failure, he suffers not from lack of sleep, but from his mind's inability to accept what is. There is freedom in releasing control. There is power in refusing to fight against reality. There is strength in recognizing that restlessness is just another state of being, neither good nor bad, just present. When sleep comes, let it come. When it does not, do not chase it. Stay still, observe, breathe. The mind that refuses to panic is the mind that recovers the fastest. Many of the greatest thinkers, warriors, and leaders functioned on broken sleep. The Roman generals who planned battles through the night, the philosophers who spent hours in deep thought instead of forcing themselves to rest, the inventors and poets who worked through dawn because inspiration came before sleep. They did not see sleeplessness as a disease. They saw it as extra time, an opportunity, a test of resilience. And because they did not fear it, because they did not resist it. It had no power over them. The body knows how to recover. It does not need constant interference. It does not need panic. It does not need obsessive worry over how many hours have been lost. The body will sleep when it needs to, and when it does not, the mind should remain indifferent. Let others stress over perfect conditions. Let others waste energy demanding that their bodies obey them. The Stoic does not make such demands. The Stoic accepts everything as it comes, knowing that frustration changes nothing. A person who wakes up after a restless night but does not dwell on it feels no worse than someone who slept well. The body is often stronger than the mind allows it to be. The mind, when left undisciplined, exaggerates everything. It convinces people that fatigue is unbearable, that lost sleep is a disaster, that something must be fixed. But the reality is simple. It is just a night. It is just one phase of time, and it will pass, as everything does. What matters is the reaction. What matters is the mindset. The person who remains calm, who does not check the clock, who does not count the hours lost, who does not tell themselves a story about how terrible the next day will be. They are free. The person who panics, who fights, who lets frustration build in their chest, who believes sleep must come exactly when desired, they are trapped, not by insomnia, but by their own resistance to reality. The wise do not waste time fighting what they cannot change. They do not demand that the world operate on their terms. They do not see sleeplessness as a problem, but simply as part of life. Some nights bring rest, some do not. Some days bring energy, some do not. Nothing is guaranteed, but nothing is ruined either. The key is not to force control, but to release it. Tonight, if sleep does not come, let it be. Let the body do what it will. Let the mind settle where it chooses. Do not fight. Do not resist. Do not demand. Accept what is happening with the same discipline that allows a Stoic to accept hardship, failure, and loss. There is nothing to fix, nothing to change, nothing to fear. And in this state of calm acceptance, sleep may come effortlessly, or it may not. Either way, you will be fine. Control over sleep is an illusion, but control over the mind is not. Those who understand this no longer suffer from restlessness. They no longer fight against sleepless nights or panic over exhaustion. They no longer see sleep as something to be forced, but as something to be invited. This is where true mastery begins, not in demanding perfect rest, but in preparing the mind so thoroughly that rest becomes effortless. The body follows where the mind leads. If the mind is chaotic, filled with resistance, stress, and unexamined thoughts, sleep will be shallow, fragile, and broken. But if the mind is calm, disciplined, and trained in stillness, the body will surrender to deep, uninterrupted rest. This is the power of Stoic meditation. Most people spend their nights in a mental storm. Thoughts pull them in different directions, regrets surface, anxieties creep in, the future feels uncertain, and distractions flood the mind. They lie in bed, hoping for sleep, while their minds race through problems that cannot be solved in the dark. And then they wonder why rest does not come. They do not realize that sleep is not something that begins when the eyes close. It begins long before that. The moments before sleep determine its depth, its quality, its strength. And if those moments are spent in mental turmoil, sleep will be weak. The Stoics understood that the mind must be trained before the body can follow. They did not leave rest to chance. They did not let their thoughts run uncontrolled before bed. They took deliberate action. They prepared their minds with the same discipline that they applied to every other area of life. They practiced stillness. They silenced unnecessary noise. They guided their thoughts instead of letting their thoughts guide them. And by doing so, they entered sleep with an uncluttered mind, free of excess weight, free of regret, free of anxiety. Stoic meditation is not about emptying the mind. It is about directing it. Most people believe meditation is an attempt to silence all thoughts, to force the mind into a blank state. But the Stoics did not seek to erase thought. They sought to control it. They observed it. They questioned it. They chose where to focus. They did not allow the mind to drift into useless worry, to replay past mistakes, to obsess over what could not be changed. They guided the mind toward clarity, and in doing so, they cleared the path for restful sleep. Marcus Aurelius practiced this every night. He would reflect on his day, not with self-judgment, but with honesty. He would acknowledge his actions, his mistakes, his successes, and then he would let them go. He did not carry them into the night. He did not let unfinished thoughts linger. He did not resist what had already happened. He set his mind in order before rest, ensuring that when sleep came, it was deep, undisturbed, and free from mental interference. This practice is more than reflection. It is a form of cleansing. The mind, like the body, collects weight throughout the day. It absorbs stress. It carries the weight of choices. It holds on to thoughts that serve no purpose. If these thoughts are not removed before sleep, they do not disappear. They continue in the subconscious. They shape dreams. They create tension in the body. They prevent true rest. But when the mind is deliberately reset, when thoughts are examined and released, sleep becomes natural. One of the greatest sources of restlessness is attachment to unresolved thoughts. Most people lie awake at night because their minds are still trying to solve problems that belong to the day. They mentally revisit conversations, plan responses, anticipate difficulties, fear what is to come. The Stoics recognized this as a waste of energy. They understood that some things can be solved and some things must simply be left alone. And before sleep, they trained themselves to let go of anything that could not be controlled in that moment. Seneca advised reflecting on whether a problem required action or acceptance. If it required action, he would decide what needed to be done and then stop thinking about it until the time for action arrived. If it required acceptance, he would practice release, reminding himself that worry would change nothing. He did not allow the mind to run endlessly in circles. He did not entertain useless thoughts. He treated his mind like a well-ordered room, clearing away the unnecessary so that only what mattered remained. This mental discipline is what allows sleep to deepen. When the mind is not cluttered, when it is not tangled in worry, when it is not resisting reality, the body follows. The nervous system calms, the breath slows, the tension in the muscles dissolves. Sleep is no longer something to struggle for. It is something that arrives naturally because there is nothing blocking it. Another key aspect of Stoic meditation is detachment from external events. Most people allow their minds to be shaped by what happens during the day. If the day was good, they relax. If the day was stressful, they carry that stress into the night. Their emotions, their thoughts, their rest, all of it is dictated by forces outside of their control. But the Stoics did not live this way. They understood that external events are irrelevant to inner peace. The world may be chaotic, but the mind does not have to be. The day may be difficult, but that difficulty does not need to extend into the night. Epictetus taught that events themselves do not disturb us. It is our opinions about them that cause suffering, a delay, a failure, an insult, an unexpected obstacle. These things do not have the power to ruin sleep unless the mind allows them to. And before bed, the Stoics took deliberate steps to remove these influences. They reminded themselves that nothing external had the power to control them. They refused to let the actions of others, the mistakes of the past, or the uncertainties of tomorrow steal their peace. This mindset shift is what allows true relaxation. Most people carry the weight of the world into their rest. They replay arguments, they dwell on mistakes, they anticipate difficulties, they hold on to stress, and they wonder why their sleep is shallow. But the person who detaches from the day before, rest, is the person who wakes up stronger. The person who sees events as neutral, who does not let emotions dictate their peace, who does not Friday tenage on B, this cannot Friday cannot be changed. That person enters sleep fully free. The body cannot rest if the mind is restless, and the mind cannot be calm if it is ruled by uncontrolled thoughts. This is why Stoic meditation is essential. It is the act of choosing where to place focus. It is the practice of clearing away distractions, of settling emotions, of training the mind to be still. It is a discipline, not a passive exercise. It is not about waiting for sleep to come. It is about preparing the conditions so that sleep arrives effortlessly. Many people try to force sleep through routines, habits, and external methods, but all of these are secondary. The primary factor in sleep quality is mental discipline. A person who has trained their mind, who has prepared it for rest, who has removed excess thoughts, who has detached from external influences, who has accepted everything as it is, that person does not need sleep aids. They do not need tricks. Their mind is already in a state of readiness. And when sleep comes, it is deep, restorative, and uninterrupted. Tonight, before closing the eyes, before letting thoughts drift uncontrolled, the choice must be made. Will the mind be left in chaos, or will it be trained? Will thoughts be allowed to run wild, or will they be directed? Will rest be something that is chased, or something that is invited? The Stoics did not leave this to chance. They prepared. They cleared their minds. They chose stillness. And because they did not just sleep better. They woke up stronger. The mind that is trained in discipline sleeps deeply. The body that is free from unnecessary burdens rests without resistance. The person who does not cling to comfort does not fear its loss. This is why the Stoics did not just prepare their minds for sleep, they prepared themselves for life. And life, by its very nature, is filled with discomfort. People struggle with sleep because they are too attached to comfort. They panic at the slightest inconvenience. They expect the perfect mattress, the right temperature, the ideal conditions. They believe rest is only possible when everything is just right. But the body was never meant to be so fragile. The mind was never meant to rely on comfort. The more a person depends on luxury, the weaker they become. The more they chase ease, the more they suffer when it is taken away. The Stoics understood this and trained themselves accordingly. They did not fear discomfort because they practiced it before it was forced upon them. They did not wait for hardship to arrive before learning how to endure it. They embraced voluntary discomfort, not as a punishment, not as a test of suffering, but as a way to strengthen their will. They knew that the body does not need comfort, it needs resilience. Seneca deliberately slept on hard floors, not because he had to, but because he chose to. He wanted to ensure that he could endure anything. He refused to let his comfort control him. He refused to become dependent on softness, on warmth, on luxury. He understood that comfort is deceptive. It weakens the spirit, makes a person fragile, and creates unnecessary fears. When people grow too accustomed to ease, they panic when it is taken away. They suffer more, not because conditions are truly unbearable, but because they never trained themselves to handle anything else. This is why the Stoics exposed themselves to voluntary hardship. It was not about deprivation, it was about control. They did not allow external conditions to determine their inner strength. If they could sleep soundly on a hard floor, they could sleep anywhere. If they could rest in discomfort, they could endure anything. If they could find peace without luxury, they could remain unshaken no matter what life took away. Most people live in fear of losing their comforts. They are owned by their soft beds, their controlled environments, their familiar routines. They need everything to be just right before they can relax. But life doesn't care about their preferences. Hardship comes, loss arrives, conditions change. The person who has never trained themselves to endure discomfort suffers more than necessary. The one who has learned to let go of attachment remains in control. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He reminded himself constantly that comfort is not the goal of life. Strength is. He did not seek to avoid hardship. He did not allow himself to become weak through luxury. He prepared his body and mind by deliberately exposing himself to conditions others would avoid. He trained himself to be at peace in any situation. He knew that the moment a person needs comfort, they have already lost. This is why occasional discomfort is necessary. It is a reminder that you are not dependent on ease. It is proof that your body can handle more than you think. It is training for the inevitable challenges that life will bring. Those who deliberately embrace hardship find themselves prepared when real adversity strikes. Those who only seek comfort crumble under pressure. The body is stronger than people believe. It can adapt, endure, and function under extreme conditions. But most people never test it. They surround themselves with softness and then wonder why they feel weak. They chase luxury and then wonder why they panic when it is taken away. The answer is clear: they have not trained for anything else. Epictetus, who was born into slavery, understood the dangers of attachment better than anyone. He had nothing, yet he was free in ways most people will never be. He saw that suffering did not come from lack of comfort. It came from believing that comfort was necessary. He did not rely on external ease to determine his inner peace. He remained indifferent to luxury because he knew that it was not the source of strength. Strength came from within. And because he knew this, no condition, no hardship, no loss could shake him. This is why the Stoics taught detachment from comfort, not because comfort is bad, but because dependence on it makes a person weak. They trained themselves to endure less, so that when the time came, they could endure anything. The one who is comfortable in hardship will always be stronger than the one who only thrives in ease. At night, when the soft bed feels like a necessity, when rest seems impossible without the perfect conditions, this is the moment to practice, to remove the attachment, to remember that the body does not need excess, it needs resilience. Comfort is temporary. It can be taken away at any moment, but the strength to endure remains if it is cultivated. Sleeping on the floor is not about suffering. It is about reminding yourself that you can. It is about proving that your comfort does not control you. It is about training the mind to remain unshaken no matter where you are. no matter what conditions you face. If you can rest in discomfort, you will never be owned by luxury. If you can find peace in difficulty, you will never fear hardship. The weak panic when life removes their ease. The strong remain the same in all conditions. This is the true power of detachment, the ability to walk through life unaffected by changes in circumstance, the ability to sleep soundly, whether on silk sheets or a cold floor, the ability to face any hardship with the knowledge that nothing external can take away your peace. Seneca did not sleep on the floor because he had to. He did it because he refused to be owned by comfort. He trained himself so that no matter where he found himself, no matter what was taken from him, he would never be weaker because of it. His peace did not depend on his environment. It depended only on his own discipline. This is what separates the ordinary from the strong. Most people are slaves to their comforts. They rely on ease, on warmth, on convenience. They convince themselves that they need these things, and because of this, they suffer when they are gone. The Stoics were free. They did not need luxury to sleep well. They did not need perfect conditions to feel at peace. They built their resilience before hardship arrived. Tonight, when the bed feels like the only option, question it. When comfort seems necessary, challenge it. When the mind resists the idea of discomfort, confront it. Every moment of voluntary hardship is a step toward true independence. Every time the body learns that it does not need luxury, it becomes stronger. Every act of detachment is an act of self-mastery. And when real hardship comes, when life removes what was once familiar, when comfort is no longer an option, those who have trained will not suffer. They will not fear. They will not break, because they have already walked through discomfort before it was forced upon them, because they have already proven to themselves that they can endure anything. Strength is built in discomfort, but clarity is built in stillness. The ability to endure hardship makes a person unbreakable, but the ability to master thought makes a person unshakable. The body can be trained to sleep anywhere, under any condition, but the quality of rest is determined by the state of the mind, and nothing shapes the mind more than the final thought before sleep. Most people do not realize that their last thoughts at night dictate the emotions they wake up with. They let the mind wander aimlessly before sleep, filling it with worries, regrets, distractions, and unfinished thoughts. They allow stress from the day to linger. They replay arguments, dwell on mistakes, anticipate problems. And then they wonder why they wake up tired, frustrated, and already on edge. They do not realize that sleep does not erase thoughts. It absorbs them. The last moments before rest are the foundation for the mind that rises in the morning. The person who goes to sleep with anger wakes up irritable. The one who falls asleep thinking about failure wakes up insecure. The one who lets their thoughts spiral wakes up feeling lost. But the person who chooses their final thought with purpose wakes up clear, steady, and in control. The Stoics understood this deeply. They did not let the mind drift unchecked before bed. They did not waste those last moments on trivial concerns. They treated them as sacred, as an opportunity to set the mind straight, to direct it, to end the day with intention. Just as a builder does not leave the structure of a house unstable before walking away, the Stoic does not leave the mind cluttered before sleep. Marcus Aurelius made it a habit to reflect on what kind of person he was becoming before he closed his eyes at night. He did not judge himself harshly, but he did not lie to himself either. He asked whether he had lived according to his values, whether he had remained disciplined in his actions, whether he had allowed external events to dictate his emotions, and most importantly, whether he had improved, even slightly, from the day before. This practice ensured that each night was not just the end of another cycle, but a deliberate step towards self-mastery. Most people assume that rest comes from simply shutting down, that if they close their eyes and wait long enough, sleep will take over. But the mind is not a machine that simply powers off. It processes. It continues its work, even in rest. And if it is not given direction, if it is not taught where to go before sleep, it will default to whatever noise is left unresolved. The thoughts that are left unexamined in waking hours do not disappear. They turn into tension, into restlessness, into unease. Seneca believed that going to sleep with an unsettled mind was no different from going to bed in a cluttered, chaotic room. It suffocates, it weighs heavy, it does not allow for true rest. He wrote that every night should be used as a moment of closure, not just for practical matters, but for the soul itself, a time to review, release, and reset, a time to consciously choose the last thought that will settle into the subconscious. The choice of this final thought is everything. A mind that ends the day in gratitude wakes up resilient. A mind that ends in anger wakes up tense. A mind that ends in wisdom wakes up with direction. The last thought is a seed planted in the mind before rest. It will grow, whether chosen with care or not. The question is whether it will grow into strength or into weakness. Epictetus warned against falling asleep in a state of mental weakness. He believed that what a person allows into their mind before bed either strengthens or corrupts them. He saw these final moments as an opportunity to reinforce discipline, to solidify virtue, to fortify the mind. He did not let the day's failures define his night. He did not allow frustration to fester. He did not carry unfinished arguments into rest. He settled everything internally before closing his eyes. This practice is not about lying to oneself or pretending that everything is perfect. It is not about forcing positive thoughts or ignoring problems. It is about choosing the most useful perspective before surrendering to sleep. It is about deciding which thoughts are worth keeping and which must be discarded. It is about ensuring that the last impression left on the mind before unconsciousness is one of strength, clarity, and acceptance. Most people assume that sleep is a reset button, that everything will simply start fresh in the morning. But the mind does not reset. It continues. The weight of unresolved emotions carries into the next day. The frustrations left unexamined remain just beneath the surface. The anxieties that were entertained at night linger in the background, shaping the way a person moves through the world. This is why ending the day with purpose is essential. The person who chooses their last thought wisely does not wake up as a slave to yesterday. They wake up free, ready, and unburdened. The most powerful final thought is one of acceptance and direction, acceptance of everything that has already happened, without resistance, without regret, without wishing it were different, and direction for what will come next, not through fear, but through clarity. The combination of these two removes all unnecessary suffering. There is nothing left to carry into sleep. No weight, no tension, no restless processing. The weak let their final thought be dictated by chance. They allow whatever lingers in their mind to take root. They surrender to negativity, distraction, or worry, and they wonder why they wake up feeling unsteady. The strong take control. They design their last thought deliberately. They leave nothing unresolved. They ensure that when sleep arrives, the mind is already set in the right direction. Seneca advised that before sleep, a person should ask themselves, "If I do not wake up, Would I be content with the life I live today? Not to create fear, but to create urgency, to ensure that no moment was wasted, that no day was left in regret, that no time was taken for granted. He saw sleep as a miniature death, a nightly reminder that time is not unlimited, that every day must be lived in alignment with wisdom. Marcus Aurelius often ended his days by reminding himself that he was not owed another sunrise. He did not do this to create despair, but to deepen gratitude. If he woke up, it was a gift. If he did not, he had already lived fully. This practice kept his mind sharp. He did not waste time. He did not dwell on trivial matters. He did not let himself be consumed by emotions that would mean nothing in the face of death. This is why the last thought matters. It determines not just the night, but the next day. It is the final note before sleep and the first echo upon waking. The wise do not let it be chosen by accident. They do not let it be because of frustration, fear, or regret. They design it with precision, with purpose, with strength. Tonight, before sleep, a choice will be made, whether consciously or not. The mind will either drift aimlessly or be set in the right direction. The weak will allow the last thought to be random, reactive, uncontrolled. The strong will shape it, refine it, make it useful. Because the final thought is not just the ending of one day, it is the foundation of the next. The final thought before sleep sets the tone for the next day. But what happens when the mind refuses to settle? When sleep does not come easily because thoughts flood in, one after another, pulling attention in different directions? Most people suffer not from external problems, but from the war inside their own heads. They overthink every decision, replay past conversations, anticipate future troubles, and obsess over what cannot be controlled. This is the true source of exhaustion, not the events of the day, but the mind's inability to let go of them. The Stoics understood that overthinking is not thinking. It is mental noise. It is the mind running in circles, generating problems that do not exist, dwelling on things that have already happened, or things that may never happen. It is wasted energy, a fire that feeds itself, a trap that catches those who do not know how to escape it. Overthinking does not solve problems. It creates them, and when it happens at night, it disrupts sleep, weakens the body, and leaves a person drained before the next day even begins. People assume they have no control over these racing thoughts. They believe the mind will do as it pleases, that it cannot be directed, that it must be endured. But the Stoics knew this was false. The mind is not an untamed force. It is a tool, and like any tool, it must be used with precision or it will cause destruction. Those who do not train their minds are ruled by them. They are dragged through endless loops of worry, regret, and doubt. They do not think, they are thought. Marcus Aurelius, despite being one of the most powerful men in history, did not let his mind control him. He wrote about choosing which thoughts were worth keeping and discarding the rest. He did not allow himself to dwell on things that did not serve him. He understood that just because a thought appears does not mean it must be followed. The weak let their minds pull them in every direction. The strong decide which direction to go. Overthinking is nothing more than the mind searching for problems when none exist. It is an addiction to control, a desperate attempt to predict, prepare, and prevent. But the future cannot be controlled through endless analysis. The past cannot be rewritten through mental repetition. The present cannot be enjoyed when the mind is elsewhere. The Stoics understood this, and they refused to allow their thoughts to run unchecked. Seneca believed that the key to mental peace was learning to differentiate between what is useful and what is not. He did not waste time entertaining thoughts that did nothing but create distress. He understood that some things were worth deep reflection, but most thoughts were simply noise that needed to be ignored. A person cannot fight every thought that enters the mind. The more attention given to unnecessary thoughts, the more powerful they become. The only way to silence overthinking is to refuse to engage with it. The reason most people struggle with overthinking at night is because they do not set boundaries for their own minds. They let their thoughts wander aimlessly, giving them too much space, too much power, too much freedom to disrupt peace. The mind, when undisciplined, will attach itself to any worry, any fear, any doubt. It will amplify small concerns into great anxieties. But when the mind is trained, when it is put under control, when it is directed instead of obeyed, overthinking disappears. Epictetus taught that a thought only has power if it is believed. If the mind produces a fear, but that fear is ignored, it withers. If it creates doubt, but doubt is dismissed, it weakens. If it brings up regret, but regret is seen as useless, it fades. Most people do not suffer from real problems. They suffer from their belief in their thoughts. They do not question them. They accept them as truth. And because they do, they become trapped in an endless cycle of unnecessary thinking. This is why the Stoics did not let their minds run uncontrolled. They did not allow themselves to be swept away by every passing thought. They observed their thoughts without attachment. They watched them arise and fall, like clouds in the sky, never holding on to any single one. They decided what to keep and what to discard. This is the key to breaking free from overthinking. A person who is ruled by their mind will never find peace. They will chase thoughts endlessly, trying to solve imaginary problems, trying to create certainty where none exists. But the mind does not have to be an enemy. It can be trained, disciplined, controlled. It can be taught to focus only on what is useful and to ignore the rest. One of the most powerful Stoic techniques for avoiding overthinking is the practice of questioning thoughts. Just because a thought appears does not mean it is true. It does not mean it is worth attention. Most thoughts are reflexes, habits of the mind formed over years of repetition. They are not reality. They are not commands. They are simply noise. When a thought arises, it must be questioned. Does this thought serve me? Does it solve a real problem? Is it worth my attention? Or is it just another distraction? Most thoughts, when examined, are useless. They do not lead anywhere. They do not improve life. They do not solve real problems. They only create suffering, and if they are useless, they do not need to be followed. They do not need to be entertained. They do not need to be believed. This is how the Stoics mastered their minds. They did not try to stop thinking altogether. They simply chose what to think about and ignored everything else. At night, when overthinking begins, when the mind starts to race, when it fills itself with worries and doubts, this practice must be applied. The thoughts must be questioned, examined, filtered. If they serve no purpose, they must be left alone. If they do not lead to action, they must be ignored. If they do nothing but cause distress, they must be dismissed. The moment a person stops giving power to unnecessary thoughts, overthinking ends. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that his mind was his own. He refused to be ruled by thoughts that did not serve him. He trained himself to let go of anything that did not improve his life. He did not waste energy fighting his mind. He simply stopped believing everything it produced. This is why the Stoics slept deeply. They did not carry unnecessary thoughts into the night. They did not let their minds control them. They did not give weight to worries that did not deserve attention. They understood that peace does not come from solving every thought, but from choosing which thoughts are worth solving. Overthinking is a habit, not a necessity. It is a mental pattern, not a reality. And like all habits, it can be broken. The person who learns to question their thoughts, to refuse unnecessary engagement, to direct their mind instead of being directed by it, that person finds peace. That person sleeps deeply. That person wakes up clear and focused. Tonight, when the mind begins its usual cycle, a choice must be made: to follow or to dismiss, to engage or to ignore, to let the mind control the night or to take control of the mind. The Stoics made their choice. They chose clarity over chaos, and because of that, they were free. The mind does not stop working when the body rests. It does not pause, does not reset, does not erase the thoughts, emotions, and experiences gathered throughout the day. It continues, processing, reorganizing, making sense of everything absorbed while awake. Those who train their minds to be disciplined in waking hours do not just benefit during the day. They shape the very landscape of their subconscious. They sleep lighter, dream clearer, and wake up with a mind that is not burdened by confusion. Those who allow their thoughts to remain chaotic, however, carry that same disorder into sleep. Their minds do not rest, their dreams become fragmented, and they wake up just as mentally exhausted as when they lay down. The Stoics understood that sleep is not just about physical recovery, it is about mental refinement. The way the mind is trained determines what happens in unconscious hours. A person who spends their day in a state of discipline, clarity, and reason does not suddenly fall into disorder when they sleep. Their mind continues in the same manner, reinforcing what was practiced while awake. But a person who allows their emotions to rule them, who lets their thoughts run uncontrolled, who reacts rather than responds, will find their subconscious just as undisciplined as their waking mind. Most people assume dreams are random. They believe they are meaningless, uncontrollable, a mere side effect of sleep. But the Stoics saw the mind as something that could be shaped, and that shaping did not stop when the eyes closed. If thoughts could be controlled during the day, if emotions could be mastered, if reactions could be measured, then what reason was there to believe that the subconscious could not be influenced in the same way? If the mind is a garden, then dreams are the wild growth that comes from whatever is planted in it. The person who fills their day with unnecessary worry, distraction, and indulgence will find their dreams reflect the same chaos. The person who spends their waking hours refining their mind, purging useless thoughts, and strengthening their reason will see the effects even in their sleep. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, often wrote about the connection between thoughts and the subconscious. He understood that whatever the mind is trained to focus on during the day will not disappear at night. If a person feeds their mind with virtue, self-discipline, and wisdom, their subconscious will continue reinforcing these ideas. But if they allow themselves to be dominated by fear, impulse, and external distractions, their dreams will reflect the same lack of control. This is why many people wake up feeling as if they have fought battles in their sleep, as if their minds have spent the night working against them rather than restoring them. They do not realize that their daytime habits determine the quality of their unconscious thoughts. Seneca believed that dreams were a reflection of a person's true mental state, not the version of themselves they presented to the world, not the persona they carefully crafted, but the raw, unfiltered result of their inner world. A mind that is conflicted will produce troubled dreams. A mind that is at peace will create clarity, even in sleep. He did not see dreams as something mystical or prophetic, but as a mirror held up to the subconscious. If dreams were restless, it was a sign that something in the waking mind needed to be corrected. If they were disturbed, it meant emotions were not being properly handled. If they were meaningless and fragmented, it meant the mind was unfocused even while awake. Epictetus taught that a person who trains themselves in discipline during the day will not lose that discipline at night. They will dream as they live, with control, with order, with purpose. The mind will continue processing what it has been given. If it has been given nothing but distractions, indulgences and anxieties, that is what will dominate sleep. But if it has been given stillness, self-examination and strength, then even in dreams, those qualities will persist. Most people do not consider what they bring into sleep. They consume information late into the night, let their minds be filled with nonsense, entertain thoughts that serve no purpose, and then they wonder why their dreams feel restless. They don't understand that sleep does not cleanse the mind of what has been put into it. It reflects it. The body may shut down for rest, but the mind does not erase itself. It continues, carrying forward whatever has been fed into it. If a person fills their thoughts with unnecessary fears, those fears do not stay behind when they fall asleep. They follow them. If a person allows their mind to be chaotic during the day, that chaos does not stop just because the body is at rest. The Stoics knew that mental discipline does not stop when the eyes close. It is a lifelong practice, carried even into the unconscious. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that everything in life, including thought itself, should be cultivated with purpose. He did not allow his mind to be ruled by chance. He did not let useless worries linger. He directed his thinking with precision, and because he did so, even in sleep, his mind remained trained. He did not wake up feeling disconnected, as if his mind had worked against him all night. He woke up with clarity, because his mind had been trained to remain clear. Seneca often warned that a person's greatest battles are fought in their own head. This does not stop when sleep begins. The fears, the doubts, the regrets, they follow a person into unconsciousness. This is why the Stoics trained themselves not to carry unnecessary thoughts. They did not let their minds fill with useless distractions. They did not allow unresolved emotions to fester. They ended each day with mental discipline, ensuring that nothing unnecessary remained. Dreams, to the Stoics, were not mystical visions, but mental echoes. They revealed what had not been settled. They exposed what had been ignored. They forced the mind to confront what had been pushed away. A person who has spent the day in distraction, in avoidance, in indulgence, will find that their dreams remind them of what they have been running from. But a person who has faced everything fully, who has left nothing unresolved, will find that sleep is a place of clarity, not confusion. Most people wake up feeling exhausted because they do not realize their minds have been fighting themselves all night. They allow overthinking, fear, and regret to dominate their waking hours, and they assume these things will disappear when they sleep. But they do not disappear. They linger, grow, take new shapes, and they create a restless night, a night filled with unclear dreams, a night that does not restore but drains. The solution is not to control dreams themselves, but to control the waking mind. A person who disciplines their thoughts during the day does not have to worry about what will happen in sleep. Their mind has already been trained. It will not turn against them in the night because it has already been set on the right path. Before sleep, the mind must be cleared, refined, and put into order. Thoughts that serve no purpose must be dismissed. Emotions that linger must be understood and released. Unresolved conflicts must not be carried forward. A person who masters their waking thoughts will find that their dreams follow the same discipline. The subconscious is not separate from the conscious mind. It is a continuation of it. A person who allows themselves to be ruled by impulse, distraction, and anxiety while awake will find that their dreams reflect the same lack of control. But the person who practices self-mastery does not suffer this way. They sleep deeply. They dream clearly. They wake up with their minds unburdened, ready to face the day with strength, because even in sleep, they remain in control. The mind is not designed to hold everything. It cannot carry every thought, process every worry, or hold on to every piece of information collected throughout the day without consequence. The more it tries to do so, the heavier it becomes, the slower it functions, the more restless it feels. The reason most people struggle to sleep is not because their bodies are tired. It is because their minds are overcrowded. Sleep is not just a physical process. It is a mental surrender. The mind must be willing to let go before the body can fully rest. But most people bring too much with them into the night. They lie in bed with thoughts stacked on top of each other, emotions unresolved, and distractions fighting for attention. They treat their minds like storage units, filled with things they refuse to discard. And then they wonder why they wake up exhausted. They assume rest is simply about closing their eyes, but the mind does not shut down just because the body does. If it is filled with clutter, it will continue working, sorting through unnecessary thoughts, replaying useless details, and holding on to mental baggage that should have been left behind. The Stoics understood that the mind, like a room, must be kept in order. It cannot be filled endlessly with every concern, every regret, every irrelevant detail without eventually becoming suffocated. Clarity requires space, and space requires intentional removal. A person who carries everything with them does not move freely. A mind that hoards every passing thought does not function clearly. Marcus Aurelius saw the importance of mental minimalism long before modern psychology recognized the effects of cognitive overload. He wrote about the need to strip away what is unnecessary, to focus only on what matters, to remove what distracts, and to leave the mind uncluttered. He did not waste time entertaining every thought that appeared. He understood that not every idea, not every problem, not every memory deserved his attention. If something was outside his control, it was dismissed. If it served no purpose, it was let go. He treated his mind the way a craftsman treats his tools, with care, with precision, and with discipline. Most people do the opposite. They let their minds become crowded with excess. They dwell on conversations long after they have ended. They obsess over things they cannot change. They collect stress, worries, and predictions about the future, treating every thought as if it deserves to be kept. But just as a cluttered space creates physical stress, a cluttered mind creates mental exhaustion. Seneca compared the mind to a ship weighed down by too much cargo. A ship that carries only what is necessary moves swiftly, efficiently, without unnecessary struggle. But a ship overloaded with useless weight becomes slow, difficult to steer, vulnerable to sinking. The mind is no different. If it is not cleared before sleep, it drags unnecessary baggage into the night. It does not rest. It wrestles with its own excess. Epictetus believed that most suffering is self-imposed. Not because people enjoy suffering, but because they refuse to remove what causes it. They hold on to every thought, react to every worry, entertain every doubt. They do not question whether something belongs in their mind or whether it should be discarded. And so they become weighed down by things that should have been let go long ago. This is why decluttering the mind before sleep is necessary. It is not a luxury. It is not optional. It is essential for true rest. The mind must be emptied of what does not serve it, freed from unnecessary burdens, and prepared for the stillness of sleep. This is not done passively. It is done with deliberate action. One of the most effective Stoic techniques for mental minimalism is the practice of release. Before bed, thoughts must be sorted. What is worth keeping? What is worth ignoring? What serves no purpose? Most people do not realize they have the ability to let go of thoughts at will. They believe that because a thought appears, it must be followed. But the Stoics knew this was false. A thought only stays if it is entertained. A worry only lingers if it is fed. A regret only grows if it is given attention. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that most thoughts are nothing more than passing clouds. They appear, they drift, they disappear. The only difference is whether they are allowed to stay. A disciplined mind does not cling. It does not hold on to what is unnecessary. It does not let distractions build. It observes, sorts, and removes. Seneca believed that the best way to clear the mind before sleep was to write things down. He did not allow thoughts to remain tangled in his mind. He put them onto paper, where they could be seen clearly. If a thought was worth revisiting, it could be dealt with in the morning. If it was useless, it was discarded, but it was not left to linger in the subconscious, disturbing rest. Epictetus took a different approach. He mentally dismissed what did not matter. He practiced asking himself whether a thought deserved his attention. If it did not, he refused to entertain it. He did not let his mind become a storage place for useless concerns. He understood that mental clutter is a choice. Most people allow their minds to be ruled by noise. They believe they are at the mercy of their thoughts. They do not realize they have the power to remove what does not belong. But just as a person can clean a physical space, they can clean their minds. And before sleep, this cleaning is not just useful, it is necessary. A cluttered mind does not rest. It works. It sorts. It processes what should have been discarded. And when this happens, sleep is shallow, restless, weak. A mind that has been cleared, however, sinks into deep rest without resistance. It does not hold on to what is useless. It does not wrestle with unfinished concerns. It does not struggle against itself. This is why the Stoics slept well. They did not just train their minds during the day, they prepared them for the night. They did not allow themselves to be weighed down by excess. They did not carry unnecessary burdens into sleep. They removed, released, let go. Most people assume they need more sleep when what they really need is less mental clutter. They believe exhaustion comes from lack of rest, when it often comes from too much thinking, too much processing, too much unnecessary mental weight. The body may sleep, but if the mind is still full, true rest does not happen. The Stoics did not let this happen. They understood that a clear mind is a well-rested mind. They trained themselves to remove distractions, to focus only on what mattered, to declutter their thoughts before sleep. This is why they woke up with clarity. This is why they were not owned by overthinking. This is why they moved through life with strength. Tonight, before sleep, there is a choice: to let the mind remain full, cluttered, weighed down, or to clear it, to remove what does not serve, to free the subconscious from unnecessary burdens, to prepare the mind for deep, uninterrupted rest. Because true rest does not come from how many hours are spent sleeping. It comes from how empty the mind is before sleep begins. A mind that is free from unnecessary clutter rests without struggle, but even when the mind is clear, something deeper can still interfere with sleep. Not thoughts, not unfinished tasks, not distractions, but fear. The silent tension that lingers in the background, the unease that comes when the lights go out, the feeling that the night is not a place of peace, but of uncertainty. Seneca understood this fear well, not just the fear of the dark itself, but the deeper truth behind it. He saw that people do not fear darkness because of what it is, but because of what they think it represents. Darkness is the unknown. It is what cannot be seen, what cannot be controlled, what cannot be predicted. And for those who have not trained their minds, that lack of control is terrifying. Most people assume that sleep anxiety comes from stress, from overthinking, from unresolved problems, but often it is something more primal. It is the discomfort of being alone with nothing but silence. It is the realization that, in the absence of distractions, they are left with themselves. The weak seek constant noise, constant stimulation, constant reassurance. They surround themselves with artificial light, with background sounds, with anything that keeps them from facing the quiet. But the Stoics did not run from the dark. They embraced it. Seneca warned against fearing what is natural. The night comes whether it is welcomed or not. Sleep is a surrender, whether one resists it or not. The darkness is not an enemy. It is simply an absence of light. But the mind that is weak fills that absence with something worse. It fills it with imaginary dangers, with fears that do not exist, with the belief that something must be lurking just beyond sight. This is why many people find it difficult to fall asleep, not because they are physically restless, but because they do not trust what they cannot see. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to be at peace with whatever happened in life, including what lay beyond his control. He understood that fear is a creation of the mind, not a reflection of reality. He did not let his emotions dictate his response to things that were neutral, and this included the night. He saw no reason to fear what was always going to come. He accepted it as a necessary part of life. Those who fought against it, who resisted, who let fear take hold, were the ones who suffered, not because the night harmed them, but because they harmed themselves through their own imagination. Seneca believed that training in darkness was essential for strengthening the mind. He advised deliberately exposing oneself to it, not just to endure it, but to make peace with it, to sit in an unlit room and confront the unease, to walk in the night without a lantern, to sleep in unfamiliar conditions. He believed that those who feared darkness were weakened by their own avoidance. The more they fled from it, the stronger their fear became. The more they resisted it, the more it controlled them. Most people do not realize how much energy is wasted on fearing what is harmless. They react to shadows as if they are threats. They let their minds create problems where none exist. They fill the unknown with imagined dangers, even though nothing has ever harmed them in the dark except their own thinking. This is why many struggle to sleep. Their minds do not trust stillness. They seek movement, light, reassurance. They do not know how to simply be in the presence of nothingness. Epictetus taught that the only way to overcome fear is through direct confrontation. Avoiding what makes a person uncomfortable does not remove the discomfort. It strengthens it. The person who always needs a light at night will always fear the dark. The person who avoids silence will always fear being alone with their thoughts. The person who cannot sleep without distractions will never learn to rest in true stillness. The Stoics did not view the night as something to be feared. They saw it as a test of the mind's ability to remain calm in the unknown, to accept what is without resistance, to let go of the need for control. Those who train themselves to be comfortable in darkness find that they are no longer disturbed by it. They sleep deeply because their minds are not searching for dangers that do not exist. They wake up stronger because they are no longer ruled by the fears that control others. Most people do not question their fears. They assume that discomfort means danger. But Seneca understood that fear is often just a habit of the mind, a conditioned response to something that was never truly a threat. And the only way to break that habit is to stop feeding it, to stop reacting as if the night is something to escape, to stop reinforcing the belief that sleep must be surrounded by artificial security. Darkness itself does nothing. It does not harm, it does not attack, it does not threaten. It is the mind that fills it with meaning, and that meaning determines whether a person sleeps peacefully or lies awake in quiet distress. A mind that sees the night as a natural state, as a time for restoration, as a space that does not need to be feared, that mind will always rest well. A mind that resists, that treats darkness as something unnatural, that cannot handle the absence of distractions, that mind will always struggle. Seneca often reminded himself that death itself is nothing more than an eternal night, and if a person cannot handle a few hours of darkness, how can they handle the thought of what comes at the end of life? If the absence of light brings unease, how can they expect to face greater unknowns with any courage? He saw fear of the night as a symptom of deeper weakness, a sign that a person has not yet mastered their mind. Most people avoid thinking about their own mortality. They live as if they will always wake up. They treat sleep as a minor inconvenience rather than as a reminder of life's impermanence. But the Stoics saw it differently. They saw sleep as a nightly rehearsal for the final sleep. And if a person could learn to surrender to it without fear, they would be one step closer to mastering their fear of death itself. This is why training the mind to embrace darkness is essential. It is not just about sleep. It is about overcoming the habit of fear. It is about proving that the unknown does not have to be a source of anxiety. It is about learning to rest without resistance, to let go of control, to trust that nothing needs to be controlled at all. A person who trains themselves to rest in the dark does not just sleep better, they live better. They do not fear uncertainty in life because they have already faced it in the night. They do not resist change because they have already learned to let go in sleep. They do not cling to false security because they have already proven to themselves that they do not need it. Tonight, when the lights go out, when the silence settles in, there is a choice: to resist or to accept, to fear or to embrace, to remain trapped by an illusion or to finally break free. The Stoics made their choice long ago. And because they did, they slept deeply. They woke up fearless. They moved through life unshaken. And they understood a truth that most people never will. The night is not the enemy. Fear is. Fear is an undisciplined mind running wild. Those who have trained themselves to embrace the darkness, to sit in stillness without seeking escape, to let go of unnecessary fears, find that the night is no longer an enemy. But mastering fear is not enough. Mastering sleep itself requires discipline. It is not something that happens by chance, not something that can be forced or avoided. It is a process that, like all things in life, must be cultivated with consistency and order. The weak treat sleep as a luxury, something that happens whenever it happens, something they either chase desperately or ignore recklessly. They stay awake too long, indulge in distractions, sabotage their own ability to rest, and then wonder why they wake up feeling drained. They fail to see that without structure, the mind remains restless. Without order, the body does not trust the night. They believe they can ignore the natural rhythms of life and still function at their best. But the Stoics knew better. They understood that discipline does not end when the eyes close. It extends into every part of life, including the moment a person lays their head down to sleep. Seneca saw routine as a form of mental training. A person who sets a consistent bedtime does not just improve sleep. They strengthen their ability to control themselves. They prove that they are not ruled by impulses, not driven by distractions, not dependent on chaotic habits that leave them weak. The ability to sleep at the right time, to wake at the right time, to structure one's night with as much discipline as the day. This is the mark of a mind that is in control. Most people sabotage themselves before they even step into bed. They overstimulate their minds with endless distractions, fill their nights with noise, push sleep later and later, as if it is optional. They do not realize that by ignoring order, they invite disorder. And disorder breeds exhaustion. A person who does not control their nights cannot expect to control their mornings. A person who does not set boundaries with themselves cannot expect their mind to function optimally. Marcus Aurelius did not waste time fighting against his body's natural need for rest. He did not stay awake beyond reason, nor did he indulge in sleep beyond necessity. He found balance. He followed a rhythm that kept his mind sharp, his body strong, his decisions clear. He knew that consistency creates stability, and stability creates power. A person who sleeps at random times, who allows impulse to dictate when they rest and when they rise, is no different from a person who wanders through life aimlessly. Epictetus saw sleep as an opportunity to reset the mind, but that reset only happens when sleep is respected. A mind that sleeps too late, that wakes up inconsistently, that does not train itself into a pattern, does not truly rest. It lingers in a half state, never fully restored, never fully prepared, never truly sharp. The person who lacks discipline in their sleep lacks discipline in their thoughts. And the person who lacks discipline in their thoughts lacks discipline in their actions. The body thrives on order. It does not respond well to unpredictability. A person who wakes up at different times every day, who lets their nights be dictated by impulse, who does not create structure, forces their body into confusion. The mind does not know when to shut down, when to repair, when to prepare for the next day. And the result is a constant state of fatigue, the illusion of rest without the benefits of real recovery. Seneca believed that the first and last moments of the day determined the strength of everything in between. The way a person enters sleep shapes the way they wake up. The way they wake up shapes the way they move through life. If the night is chaotic, the morning will be as well. If sleep is inconsistent, focus will be inconsistent. If bedtime is treated as an afterthought, discipline in all areas will suffer. Most people assume that success in life comes from action alone, but the Stoics knew that how a person rests is just as important as how they work. The ability to function at a high level, to think clearly, to make strong decisions, to remain emotionally steady. All of it is dependent on how well the body and mind are restored at night. and that restoration only happens when it is done with discipline. The weak complain about feeling exhausted while doing nothing to prevent it. They wonder why they cannot focus while living without structure. They treat sleep as something separate from life, rather than a foundation for everything else. But the disciplined know that how one does anything is how one does everything. If sleep is treated carelessly, life will be lived carelessly. If the night is not controlled, the day will not be either. Marcus Aurelius understood that discipline in sleep was no different from discipline in thought, action, and emotion. A person who can commit to a structured bedtime can commit to a structured life. The ability to follow through, to create consistency, to build strong habits is tested every night. If a person cannot even control when they go to bed, how can they control anything else? Seneca saw late nights filled with meaningless distractions as a sign of weakness, not because staying up is inherently bad, but because it often reflects a lack of control. A person who constantly sacrifices rest for entertainment, who refuses to set limits, who treats their own well-being as secondary to temporary pleasures, is not in command of their own life. The way a person treats their nights is the way they treat themselves. Those who respect themselves follow routines that strengthen them. Those who neglect themselves live as if their energy is infinite, as if their mind does not need structure, as if they can endlessly delay self-care without consequences. Epictetus believed that self-discipline is a form of freedom. The person who follows a routine is not trapped by it. They are free from fatigue, free from sluggishness, free from the chaotic effects of poor sleep. The one who ignores routine, who follows impulse, who sleeps when they feel like it rather than when they should, is not free. They are a slave to exhaustion, a prisoner of inconsistency, a victim of their own lack of control. Most people avoid structure because they see it as restrictive. They assume that discipline in sleep means giving up enjoyment, giving up flexibility, giving up freedom. But the opposite is true. The person who sleeps with discipline wakes up ready, sharp, unburdened. They do not waste the first hours of the day trying to recover from a night of bad decisions. They do not drag themselves through life with half their energy drained before they even begin. They move deliberately, efficiently, powerfully. Marcus Aurelius did not indulge in the weakness of waking up whenever he felt like it. He did not let sleep be dictated by how he felt in the moment. He had a responsibility to himself, to his mind, to his life. And so he treated sleep as part of his discipline, not separate from it. He understood that a structured night created a structured morning, and a structured morning created a structured mind. Those who master sleep through discipline do not struggle with exhaustion. They do not wake up feeling behind before the day even starts. They do not complain about feeling tired while doing nothing to change their habits. They take full responsibility for their energy, their focus, their strength. They do not leave it to chance. They do not wait for their body to demand rest. They give it what it needs before it is forced to beg for it. Most people live in cycles of exhaustion because they treat sleep as an inconvenience rather than a necessity. They assume they can ignore the body's need for structure without consequences. They believe they can function without order, but the Stoics knew that without routine, there is no power. Without discipline, there is no clarity. Without structure, there is no control. Tonight, the choice will be made again. To sleep whenever impulse dictates, to let distractions push bedtime later and later, to live without structure, or to commit, to decide, to take control, to set a routine, to follow it, to become the kind of person who does not let the night slip away in weakness. Because the way a person sleeps is the way they live, and the way they live determines everything. Discipline in sleep is discipline in life. A structured night creates a structured morning. A mind that follows order before rest wakes up clear, focused, and prepared. But even with perfect discipline, even with a strict routine, even with a well-trained mind, there is one truth that no amount of structure can control: the uncertainty of tomorrow. Most people sleep as if waking up is guaranteed. They move through their nights assuming there will always be another morning, always another day to correct mistakes, always more time to waste. They live in a false sense of permanence, avoiding the reality that at any moment life can end. They do not think about death because they believe it is too dark, too uncomfortable, too distant. But the Stoics knew better. They knew that ignoring mortality does not prevent it. It only makes people live as if life is infinite, as if time will never run out, as if they can afford to delay what matters. Seneca warned against this illusion. He saw how people wasted their days on meaningless things, how they postponed everything truly important, how they lived as if they were promised another decade, another year, another moment. He wrote that those who fear death do not fear it because they are unprepared to die. They fear it because they are unprepared to live. They have left too many things unsaid, too many actions undone, too many moments taken for granted. And when they finally confront mortality, they realize how much time they have wasted. Most people only think about death when it is too late, when it takes someone they love, when they face illness, when it becomes unavoidable. But the Stoics saw mortality not as a tragedy, not as something to be ignored, but as a tool, a reminder, a way to sharpen the mind, to create urgency, to remove hesitation. Memento mori, remember that you will die, was not a call to despair, but a call to live without delay. Marcus Aurelius reflected on death every night before sleep, not out of fear, but to ensure that no day was wasted. He reminded himself that each time he closed his eyes, he might not open them again, and because of this, he did not carry grudges into the night. He did not let minor frustrations linger. He did not waste time on things that did not matter. He knew that if he were to die in his sleep, he wanted to leave nothing unresolved. Most people assume that thinking about death before bed would cause anxiety, that it would make sleep restless. But the opposite is true. Avoidance creates anxiety. Acceptance removes it. A person who has come to terms with their own mortality does not fear sleep. They do not cling to life desperately, hoping for more time. They rest easily, knowing that they have lived the day well, that they have spoken the words that needed to be spoken, that they have done what needed to be done. Epictetus saw death as a simple fact, nothing to be mourned, nothing to be resisted. He believed that those who feared it had already lost, not because they would die sooner, but because they were not truly living. He taught that every action, every thought, every moment should be carried out as if it were the last, not in reckless indulgence, not in despair, but in full presence, full engagement, full appreciation. Most people complain about trivial things because they believe they will always have another chance to correct them. They hold grudges because they assume there will be time to make peace. They delay joy because they think it will always be available. But when a person reminds themselves of mortality, these illusions dissolve. The arguments seem less important. The frustrations lose their power. The little worries fade away, because none of them matter when tomorrow is not promised. Seneca wrote that life is long enough if it is lived fully. The problem is not that death comes too soon. The problem is that most people do not use the time they have. They fill their days with distractions, with hesitations, with avoidance. They think about the past instead of acting in the present. They fear the future instead of embracing what is in front of them. And then they reach the end and realize they never truly lived. Contemplating mortality is not about creating fear. It is about removing it. A person who accepts death does not waste time worrying about it. They do not waste energy avoiding it. They do not live in denial. They wake up each day with clarity, knowing that it may be their last. They go to sleep without regret, knowing that if they do not wake up, they have lived with purpose. Most people do not understand how much gratitude comes from this practice. They assume gratitude comes from gaining more, from having more, from accumulating things. But the deepest gratitude comes from realizing that everything is temporary, that every breath is a gift, that every moment is fragile, that life is not owed, but given. Marcus Aurelius did not let himself become attached to life as if it was something permanent. He loved, he worked, he led, but he did not assume that any of it would last. He did not complain when things changed, when people left, when moments passed. He understood that to hold on to anything too tightly is to suffer. The only way to truly appreciate life is to know that it can be taken at any time. Most people sleep without thinking, without reflecting, without reviewing the day. They assume they will wake up and have another chance. But the Stoics did not take that risk. They ended each day with awareness. They reviewed their choices. They settled their minds. They ensured that if death came in the night, they would not meet it with regret. Seneca believed that preparing for death is the only way to live well. Those who ignore it waste their time. Those who accept it use every moment wisely. They do not hesitate. They do not procrastinate. They do not live half-heartedly. They commit fully. Most people waste years waiting for the right time. They assume they will have more chances, more opportunities, more moments to say what needs to be said. But the truth is, life is always uncertain. There is no guarantee of another conversation, another hug, another sunrise. This is why the Stoics trained themselves to never leave anything unfinished, to speak what needs to be spoken, to love without hesitation, to act without delay. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that he would die, but he did not know when, and because of this, he did not leave kindness unspoken. He did not allow bitterness to linger. He did not waste time chasing things that did not matter. He did not live as if he had forever. He lived as if every day was his last opportunity to be the man he wanted to be. Most people would live differently if they truly understood how little time they have. They would stop waiting. They would stop hesitating. They would stop pretending that they can afford to waste a single moment. They would realize that life does not begin in the future. It is happening now. Seneca warned that only fools fear death. The wise use it as motivation. They do not waste their days chasing things they do not need. They do not spend their time in meaningless conflict. They do not allow themselves to be consumed by trivial worries. They live in a way that, if the end came tonight, they would not feel cheated. Those who practice memento mori before bed do not wake up afraid. They do not cling to life out of desperation. They do not suffer from regrets. They wake up with clarity, with urgency, with deep gratitude for another day that was never promised. Tonight, before sleep, there is a choice. To close the eyes assuming there will be another morning. To take another day for granted. to carry frustrations and worries as if they matter in the face of death, or to see the truth, to reflect, to let go of what does not matter, to embrace what does, because sleep is always an unknown, and life is always fragile, and the only way to live without fear is to stop pretending that there is still time. Reflecting on mortality before sleep creates clarity. It eliminates hesitation, removes trivial worries, and forces the mind to focus only on what truly matters. A person who understands the fragility of life does not waste time on unnecessary indulgences. They do not allow distractions to rule them. They do not seek comfort in excess. They understand that what they consume, what they crave, what they allow into their life, determines the strength of their mind. But even those who reflect deeply on the temporary nature of existence find themselves facing the pull of desires. The mind wants peace, but the body seeks pleasure. The body craves more food than it needs, more stimulation than it can handle, more indulgence than is good for it. And at night, when discipline weakens, these cravings come with the greatest force. Seneca warned against becoming a slave to urges. He understood that a person who cannot control their appetites, no matter how small, is weak. It is easy to believe that small indulgences do not matter, that one late-night snack, one extra hour of mindless entertainment, one more drink before bed, is harmless. But the Stoics knew that every small indulgence adds up. The body, once given what it desires without restraint, does not stop asking. It learns that cravings will be answered, that comfort will always come first, that discipline will always take a back seat to pleasure. Most people give in to their urges not because they are hungry, not because they are tired, not because they need more, but because they lack control. They do not know how to say no to themselves. They justify, they excuse, they rationalize. They tell themselves they deserve it, that it doesn't really matter, that they will be stricter tomorrow. But tomorrow never comes. A weak mind, once accustomed to easy pleasure, does not become strong overnight. Epictetus believed that true freedom was the ability to rule over one's own body. A person who cannot resist cravings is not free. They are ruled by impulse. They are controlled by desire. They obey their urges as if they are commands. They do not think, they react. They do not choose, they submit. And once that habit is built, it does not stay confined to the night. It spreads into everything. A person who cannot resist one more episode, one more snack, one more moment of indulgence before bed, will find that they also cannot resist unnecessary distractions during the day. They will find that they also procrastinate, also avoid discomfort, also seek immediate satisfaction instead of lasting strength. The Stoics knew that self-restraint is not about deprivation. It is about power. It is about proving every single day that the body does not rule the mind. Most people believe their cravings are too strong to resist. They assume they are helpless against the pull of indulgence. But the truth is that cravings only have power when they are given attention. When a person fixates on a desire, when they tell themselves they are being deprived, when they focus on the difficulty of resistance, they make the craving stronger. But when a person sees cravings as nothing more than passing impulses, they lose their power. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He trained himself to separate what he wanted from what he needed. He reminded himself that desires are not real problems. Hunger, in most cases, is not true hunger. The body is not suffering without a late-night indulgence. The mind simply wants comfort. And comfort is not what makes a person strong. Seneca believed that denying pleasure is not suffering, it is training. When a person resists unnecessary cravings, they are not depriving themselves. They are exercising control. They are proving in small ways that their will is stronger than their impulses. They are building the ability to say no, to stop, to control themselves in moments when others would give in. Most people do not train themselves in self-restraint. They assume that strength means resisting only the big temptations, major failures, extreme indulgences, dangerous impulses. But true strength is built in the small moments. In the decision to avoid unnecessary food before bed. In the refusal to give in to mindless entertainment at night. In the choice to go to sleep at the right time rather than extending the night out of weakness. Epictetus saw self-discipline as a muscle. If it is not used, it weakens. If it is not trained, it deteriorates. A person who allows themselves to indulge in small ways, night after night, will find that when a real test of restraint comes, they are already defeated. They will have no strength to resist because they have never built it. Most people assume that cravings are signals from the body that must be answered, but this is false. The body does not need constant indulgence. It does not need to be fed at all hours. It does not require entertainment every second. It does not need to be soothed every time it feels discomfort. It is the mind that creates this belief. It is the habit of indulgence that convinces a person they cannot function without pleasure. Marcus Aurelius did not let himself fall into this trap. He trained himself to be content with less. He reminded himself that satisfaction does not come from excess, but from strength. He understood that cravings are nothing more than distractions, ways the mind tries to avoid stillness, ways the body tries to cling to comfort. But comfort is the enemy of progress, and the more a person gives into it, the weaker they become. Seneca warned that a person who always satisfies their cravings will never be satisfied. The more they give in, the more they want. The body learns to expect indulgence, and when it does not receive it, it suffers. Not because it truly needs anything, but because it has been trained to depend on pleasure. This is why most people struggle with sleep. Not because they are incapable of resting, but because they have conditioned themselves to always want more. More food, more entertainment, more stimulation. They have not taught themselves how to stop. Epictetus believed that true peace comes not from having everything one wants, but from wanting less. A person who does not need to eat before bed, who does not need constant distraction, who does not feel the urge to indulge in comfort. That person is truly free. They do not suffer from cravings because they have nothing to crave. They do not struggle with desires because they have mastered them. They do not feel deprived because they have trained themselves to be content without excess. Most people do not reach this level of control because they never test themselves. They never push back against their own desires. They never see their cravings as something to be eliminated rather than obeyed. They assume they must always answer what their body wants. But the Stoics knew that true power is the ability to deny oneself and feel no loss. Seneca practiced fasting, not because he had to, but because he wanted to prove to himself that he could. He denied himself luxuries, not because they were bad, but because he wanted to train his mind not to depend on them. He slept on the floor, not because he had no bed, but because he wanted to remind himself that comfort was not necessary for survival. He refused unnecessary indulgences, not because he despised pleasure, but because he refused to let pleasure rule him. Most people allow their cravings to dictate their actions. They feel hunger, so they eat. They feel boredom, so they entertain themselves. They feel restless, so they seek comfort. But a person who controls themselves in the small things will never be controlled by the big ones. A person who does not need food at night does not need excess during the day. A person who does not require entertainment at all hours does not waste their time in distraction. A person who does not chase comfort is not afraid of hardship. Tonight, when the cravings come, there is a choice: to give in, to justify, to obey, or to stop, to say no, to prove that the body does not control the mind. The weak will indulge, the strong will resist, and those who resist will not just sleep better, they will wake up stronger. Resisting cravings at night is an act of self-mastery. It proves that the mind is in control, not the body's impulses. But there is another test, one that is even more difficult to overcome, a challenge that doesn't come from physical urges, but from the chaos of thought. Even those who have conquered indulgence can still find themselves lying awake, minds racing, unable to stop the endless flood of worries, regrets, and uncertainties. Most people believe that stress is unavoidable. They assume that the mind must replay conversations, anticipate problems, and analyze every possible outcome before rest is allowed. They do not realize that worry is not a condition of life. It is a failure of control. They allow themselves to be dragged into thoughts they cannot stop, pulled into problems they cannot solve, trapped in cycles that serve no purpose. But the Stoics didn't accept this weakness. They trained themselves to recognize the only division that matters, the separation between what is within control and what is not. Epictetus taught that suffering does not come from events themselves, but from the mind's response to them. A person who loses sleep over what they cannot change is not just wasting energy. They are making themselves weaker. They are giving power to things that do not deserve it. They are allowing the outside world to rule their inner peace. And when this becomes a habit, sleep is no longer rest. It becomes a battlefield. Marcus Aurelius understood that control is an illusion. No person, no matter how powerful, can dictate how the world unfolds. He knew that most of what people worry about is not theirs to command. They cannot stop the past from unfolding as it did. They cannot force the future into shape. They cannot make people act differently than they choose to. But they can control their own thoughts. They can decide where to place their attention, what to focus on, what to release. Most people do not make this distinction. They treat all thoughts as equal. They worry about things that cannot be changed with the same intensity as things that require action. They allow themselves to be emotionally consumed by events far beyond their reach. They stay up at night replaying mistakes, predicting failures, fearing possibilities that may never happen. They do not ask whether any of these thoughts are useful. They simply follow them, as if they have no choice. Seneca warned that the majority of human suffering comes from imaginary fears. People do not suffer from reality. They suffer from what they think might happen. They invent futures that do not exist. They torture themselves with outcomes they may never face. And in doing so, they ruin the present. A person who loses sleep over what has not happened is a person who has given up control. They have surrendered their peace to the unknown. The Stoics refused to live this way. They understood that the first step to mental freedom is recognizing what belongs to them and what does not. They did not waste time on what could not be changed. They did not allow the past to steal the present. They did not let the mind spiral into a future that did not yet exist. They focused only on what was within their hands. Most people assume that control means changing external events, But true control is mastering one's own response. The person who stays up at night worrying about what others think, about decisions that cannot be reversed, about outcomes that are already set in motion, is a person who has not yet understood this principle. They suffer because they have not yet accepted reality. Epictetus believed that acceptance is the foundation of peace, not passive surrender, not weakness, but an unshakable understanding of limits. A person who accepts what they cannot change does not waste energy resisting it. They do not replay moments that cannot be undone. They do not spend hours fearing things that are out of reach. They focus only on what can be acted upon, and they release everything else. Most people struggle with sleep because they believe they must fix everything before they rest. They assume that if they do not solve every problem, if they do not resolve every thought, if they do not prepare for every possibility, they will not be ready for what comes next. But this is a lie the mind tells itself. Sleep does not require certainty. It does not require every loose end to be tied. It only requires the ability to let go of what does not belong to you. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that his time was limited. He did not allow himself to spend precious hours lost in thought over things that could not be changed. He did not let the actions of others disturb his mind. He didn't cling to memories of failure or fear of the unknown. He trained himself every night to release what was not his to carry, and because of this, he slept without disturbance. Seneca warned that most anxiety is unnecessary. People assume that worry is productive, that thinking about a problem over and over will lead to a solution. But this is not how the mind works. Overthinking does not create answers, it creates exhaustion. It does not bring clarity, it creates confusion. The Stoics understood that the only way to free the mind is to discipline it, to stop chasing thoughts that lead nowhere, to stop feeding fears that have no purpose, to stop believing that stress is useful. Most people go to bed with their minds full of things they cannot change. They hold on to every regret, every unsolved issue, every uncertainty, and then they wonder why they cannot sleep. They do not realize that peace is a choice. It is the choice to release, the choice to focus only on what matters, the choice to separate what can be acted upon from what must simply be accepted. Epictetus believed that the mind should be trained like an athlete's body. A strong mind does not give in to useless thoughts. It does not entertain distractions. It does not waste energy resisting the inevitable. It is disciplined, focused, steady. It chooses what to engage with and ignores everything else. Most people are ruled by their thoughts. They do not believe they have the ability to control where their attention goes. They assume that if a worry appears, it must be followed. But the Stoics saw this as weakness. A person who follows every fear, every regret, every what-if, is not in command of their own mind. They are a prisoner to their own lack of discipline. Marcus Aurelius did not let his mind wander unchecked. He did not let stress take root. He did not allow himself to dwell on the past or fear the future. He reminded himself every night that he was not in control of everything. And because of this, he did not suffer over what was outside of his hands. He released it. He let it go. Most people struggle with sleep not because they have too many problems, but because they refuse to release what does not belong to them. They think about things they cannot fix. They worry about people they cannot change. They fear outcomes they cannot prevent. And they exhaust themselves fighting battles that were never theirs to fight. The Stoics mastered the ability to separate their minds from what did not serve them. They did not carry unnecessary burdens. They did not stay awake trying to control the uncontrollable. They understood that the mind, when left undisciplined, creates its own suffering. But when trained, when guided, when taught to focus only on what matters, it becomes unshakable. Tonight, when thoughts begin to pull in every direction, there is a choice: to engage, to struggle, to resist, or to release, to let go, to accept. Because the strongest mind is not the one that controls everything. It is the one that knows exactly what to ignore. Letting go of what is outside of control removes unnecessary suffering. A disciplined mind does not chase worries, does not obsess over what cannot be changed, does not allow stress to linger past its usefulness. But there's another illusion that keeps people trapped in a cycle of exhaustion: the false belief that more sleep equals more energy. Most people assume that if they feel tired, the solution is to sleep more. They believe that if they are unmotivated, if they lack focus, if they wake up sluggish, the answer is always more rest. But the Stoics knew this was a lie. They understood that rest is not about quantity, it is about quality. They did not indulge in excess sleep, did not view it as an escape, did not let themselves believe that fatigue could be cured by simply staying in bed longer. They saw sleep as a tool, not an addiction. Marcus Aurelius, despite ruling an empire, did not waste time in bed. He did not convince himself that he needed more hours to function. He did not allow himself to linger in comfort while there was work to be done. He reminded himself daily that life is short and time is the most valuable resource. He trained himself to wake early, to begin the day with purpose, to move with urgency rather than hesitation. He knew that the body will always want more rest, but the mind must decide when enough is enough. Most people sleep longer than they need because they have trained their bodies to expect it. They stay up late, indulging in distractions. They allow their energy to be drained by overthinking. They do not discipline themselves to rest properly. And then, when morning comes, they convince themselves that they are still tired, that they need more sleep, that they cannot function without extra hours. But this is a habit, not a necessity. The body is not weak. It is simply conditioned. Seneca saw oversleeping as a sign of wasted life. He wrote that people complain about time running out, yet they willingly waste hours in bed, avoiding the responsibilities of the day, delaying action, seeking more rest than they truly need. He believed that sleep should be taken only as much as required, never more. He saw the morning as an opportunity, a test of discipline, a moment to prove that the mind is in command, not the body's desire for comfort. Most people do not realize that too much sleep creates more fatigue, not less. When the body is trained to wake up early, it becomes alert, focused, ready to act. But when it is allowed to sleep excessively, it becomes sluggish, slow, resistant to movement. The Stoics did not let this happen. They understood that energy is not created by sleep, it is created by purpose. Epictetus taught that those who need long hours of sleep have not yet trained their minds to be strong. He saw excessive rest as a form of indulgence, not because sleep itself is bad, but because too much of it makes a person weak. He believed that when the body is trained to rise early, when it is taught to move without hesitation, when it does not expect excessive rest, it becomes resilient. It learns to function at its highest level with what is necessary, not with what is comfortable. Most people assume that feeling tired means they need more sleep, but the Stoics knew that tiredness is often mental, not physical. A person who wakes up without purpose will always feel sluggish. A person who wakes up without direction will always feel drained. A person who does not see urgency in their life will always convince themselves they need more time to rest. But a person who has trained themselves to wake early, to move without hesitation, to act with intention, that person does not suffer from fatigue. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that staying in bed was an act of weakness. He wrote that the human body was not meant to waste time in comfort while the world was waiting to be faced. He trained himself to resist the urge to linger under the covers, to reject the feeling of wanting just a few more moments of rest. He knew that a person who gives in to the desire to sleep longer than necessary is training themselves to give in to weakness in every area of life. Seneca warned that those who allow themselves to oversleep are robbing themselves of time they can never get back. He believed that sleep should be taken with discipline, not indulgence. He saw excessive rest as a disease, one that weakens the will, slows the mind, makes a person passive rather than active. He did not allow himself to waste time in bed when there were things to be done, when there were lessons to be learned, when there was a life to be lived. Most people assume that waking up early is a burden, but the Stoics knew that it is a privilege to open one's eyes and have another day, to have another chance to act, to have another moment to build, to grow, to improve. This is not something to waste. They did not complain about mornings. They did not delay them. They embraced them. Epictetus believed that how a person wakes up determines how they live. A person who wakes up with hesitation will live with hesitation. A person who wakes up slowly, lazily, seeking more sleep, will move through life with the same sluggishness. But a person who wakes up early, who gets out of bed without delay, who treats the morning as the first challenge to overcome, that person moves through life with strength. Most people do not struggle with sleep because they need more of it. They struggle because they are not disciplined in how they take it. They allow their nights to be filled with distractions. They do not prepare their minds for rest. They do not train themselves to wake up at the right time. And then they assume that the solution is simply more sleep. But more sleep does not fix a mind that is undisciplined. Marcus Aurelius understood that those who function best are not those who sleep the longest, but those who wake up with purpose. The body adapts to what it is trained for. A person who gives themselves 10 hours will feel like they need 10. A person who takes only 6 or 7 with discipline, with intention, with structure, will feel fully rested because they have trained themselves to be. Seneca saw that the most successful people in history were not those who spent their nights in indulgence. They were the ones who took only the sleep they needed and used the rest of their time to act. They did not let comfort steal their potential. They did not let laziness dictate their mornings. They understood that life is too short to spend excessive hours in bed. Most people do not realize that their struggle with sleep is a struggle with discipline. It is not about needing more time in bed. It is about needing more purpose when awake. It is about understanding that the body follows the mind. A mind that expects weakness, that indulges in excess, that allows itself to believe it needs more sleep than necessary, that mind will always be tired. But a mind that is trained, that is disciplined, that does not accept weakness, that mind creates energy no matter how many hours it has rested. Epictetus taught that strength is not found in comfort. Those who sleep just enough, who wake with discipline, who move with intention, those are the ones who function at their highest level. They do not complain about exhaustion because they do not waste their time indulging in habits that drain them. They do not wait for energy to come. They create it. Tonight, the choice is made again. To sleep without discipline, to wake up sluggish, to convince oneself that more rest is the answer, or to take only what is needed, to rise without hesitation, to treat the morning as a test of strength rather than an inconvenience. Because sleep is necessary, but weakness is not. Waking up early with discipline creates energy, but what about falling asleep in the first place? Many struggle with restless nights, not because they lack sleep, but because their minds are not trained to enter rest. They prepare their schedules, their bodies, their environments, but they do not prepare their breathing. They do not realize that the way they breathe determines the way they sleep. The Stoics understood that the mind is not separate from the body. They knew that if the breath is chaotic, the mind will be chaotic. If the breath is steady, the mind will be steady. They trained themselves to control their breathing, not just as a way to calm themselves in stressful moments, but as a way to guide the nervous system into a state of deep rest. Most people assume that breathing is automatic, that it happens without thought, that it does not need attention. But the Stoics knew that anything left uncontrolled weakens. The breath, when ignored, follows whatever emotion dominates the mind. When stress rises, breathing becomes shallow. When anxiety appears, it becomes rapid. When thoughts race, the breath follows them, accelerating without permission. And this is why most people can't sleep. They go to bed with a body that is still in a state of tension. They do not realize that the breath must be trained to slow before the mind can follow. Epictetus taught that a person who cannot control their breath cannot control their state of mind. He saw breathing as more than a biological function. It was a tool, a way to regain control when thoughts begin to spiral, when emotions become overwhelming, when the mind refuses to settle. He believed that if a person learned to command their breath, they could command their reactions, their impulses, their ability to move from tension to peace. Most people struggle to fall asleep because they bring the energy of the day into the night. They do not transition from movement to stillness. Their breathing stays fast, their heart stays active, their body does not believe it is time to shut down. The Stoics knew that sleep does not just happen, it must be guided. And the first step to guiding it is slowing the breath with intention. Seneca believed that the body must be trained in all things, including relaxation. He saw those who could not calm themselves as mentally unprepared. He did not allow himself to be ruled by external stresses. He trained his body to respond to his will. He did not wait for relaxation to come. He created it through breath. Most people assume that thoughts keep them awake, but the truth is that their bodies keep them awake. A body that is still tense, still engaged, still responding as if it is in the middle of the day, will not rest simply because the mind commands it to. But breathing changes this. A person who slows their breath, who deepens their inhales, who controls their exhales, signals to the body that it is time to release tension. The heart slows, the nervous system calms, the muscles relax. And when the body accepts sleep, the mind follows. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He knew that without control over breath, there was no control over self. He trained himself to breathe through frustration, breathe through anger, breathe through exhaustion. He used breath as a tool to guide his thoughts, to slow his reactions, to prepare his body for whatever was needed, including sleep. Most people lie in bed waiting for sleep to take them. They close their eyes, but their breathing remains erratic. Their nervous system is still active. Their body is still prepared for action, not for rest. They do not realize that sleep is not something to wait for. It is something to prepare for. The Stoics did not wait. They trained themselves to enter sleep the way they trained themselves for everything else, with deliberate action. Epictetus believed that a steady breath creates a steady mind. He saw breathing not just as a function, but as a method for controlling thought itself. A person who breathes deeply, rhythmically, without strain, will find that their thoughts begin to match the same pattern. The mind settles. The body follows. Sleep comes naturally, not through force, but through alignment. Most people take their breathing for granted. They assume it is something that happens in the background, something that does not require effort. But the Stoics knew that everything that is left uncontrolled weakens. A person who ignores their breath is a person who allows their emotions to dictate their state. They live at the mercy of their stress, their distractions, their inability to slow down. Seneca saw this as a failure of discipline. He believed that to master the self, one must first master the breath. A person who does not control their breath does not control their reactions. A person who does not control their reactions does not control their choices. A person who does not control their choices does not control their life. Most people assume that struggling with sleep means they need to change their environment, change their diet, change their routine. But they overlook the most important factor: their breath. The body cannot sleep if the breath does not allow it to. The breath cannot slow if it is not trained. The Stoics knew that before the mind can rest, the breath must be mastered. Marcus Aurelius practiced controlled breathing before sleep, not because he needed relaxation, but because he understood that the body obeys patterns. If a person breathes in a way that mimics calmness, their body will believe it is calm. If a person slows their breath, their body will slow. He saw breathing as a way to control the nervous system, to train it to enter sleep, to eliminate unnecessary tension. Most people do not realize that the breath is a bridge between wakefulness and rest. A person who breathes with awareness controls their transition. A person who breathes carelessly struggles. The Stoics did not leave this to chance. They trained themselves every night to use breath as a tool. Epictetus believed that without awareness of breath, a person is disconnected from their own mind. He saw those who did not control their breathing as people who lived reactively, not intentionally. He did not allow himself to be one of them. He trained himself in every moment to guide his breath, to keep it steady, to keep it aligned with the state he wished to be in. And when it was time for sleep, his breath led the way. Most people struggle with sleep because they do not understand that breath dictates state. A rapid breath keeps the mind alert. A slow breath signals rest. The Stoics knew this. They did not need sleep aids. They did not struggle with restlessness. They did not fight against their own bodies. They trained their breath. And because of this, their bodies responded with peace. Seneca believed that true relaxation is a skill. It is not something that happens by accident. It is not something that appears when needed. It is something that must be cultivated, built, and strengthened. And it begins with how a person breathes. Most people assume that breathing techniques are unnecessary, but the Stoics knew that without breath control, there is no self-control. A person who masters their breathing can slow their thoughts, settle their emotions, quiet their stress. And when the mind is still, sleep comes effortlessly. Marcus Aurelius did not see sleep as a mystery. He saw it as a result of discipline. He understood that if the body is given the right signals, it will obey. If the breath is controlled, the nervous system will follow. If the nervous system is calm, the mind will settle. And when the mind settles, sleep becomes effortless. Most people lie in bed fighting against wakefulness, trying to force sleep. But the Stoics knew that force creates resistance. The key is not to fight, it is to guide, to breathe in a way that invites rest, to train the body to follow, to allow sleep to come naturally. Tonight, when the body resists sleep, when the mind refuses to quiet, there is a choice: to struggle, to wait, to fight, or to breathe, to slow, to guide. Because sleep is not about exhaustion, it is about alignment, and the breath is the key to getting there. Breathing guides the body into rest. But what about the mind? A person may control their breath, slow their heartbeat, and relax their muscles, yet still find themselves unable to drift into deep sleep. The problem is not in the body, it is in what the mind is consuming before bed. Most people treat the final moments of the day carelessly. They spend their last waking minutes staring at screens, scrolling through distractions, absorbing noise that overstimulates rather than settles. They entertain themselves until their eyes close, feeding their minds with excess rather than wisdom. And then they wonder why they wake up feeling scattered, why they struggle with clarity, why their thoughts feel heavy before the day even begins. The Stoics understood that the quality of sleep is determined by the quality of thoughts before sleep. They knew that the last thing a person thinks about at night influences the state of the mind in the morning. They did not waste this time. They did not fill it with mindless distractions. They used it to reflect, to strengthen, to clear the mental clutter that had accumulated throughout the day. Seneca warned against the passivity of entertainment. He saw that those who fill their nights with distractions, with fleeting amusements, with stimulation that serves no purpose, are not resting, they are numbing. They are avoiding their own minds, escaping into external noise rather than facing their own thoughts. And when this becomes a habit, the mind loses its sharpness. It becomes dependent on external input. It forgets how to sit in silence. Most people do not struggle with sleep because they are physically restless. They struggle because their minds are overfed with useless information. They consume news, social media, television, meaningless content that keeps their minds engaged rather than at ease. They do not prepare themselves for rest. They do not clear their thoughts. They do not reflect on what mattered that day, on what they learned, on what needs to be released. They simply feed their minds until exhaustion takes over. Marcus Aurelius refused to end his day in a state of mental clutter. He did not allow distractions to rule his nights. He saw bedtime as a moment for refinement, not entertainment. He used his final moments to review his choices, to correct his thoughts, to reinforce his values. He treated sleep not as an escape, but as a continuation of discipline. Most people seek entertainment before bed because they do not know how to sit with their own minds. They need noise, movement, something to keep them from confronting themselves. They believe that distraction is relaxation. But the Stoics knew that true rest is found in stillness, not in stimulation. They did not fill their minds with unnecessary input. They did not chase external entertainment. They used the night to strengthen their mental discipline. Epictetus taught that the mind should not be given over to external control. A person who allows entertainment to dictate their mental state is no different from a person who has lost command over their own thoughts. They become dependent on outside sources for comfort, for stimulation, for escape. And this dependence makes them weak. Most people assume that winding down means consuming content, distracting themselves, letting something external take their attention. But this is passivity, not rest. The mind does not reset when it is being entertained. It simply transfers focus from one thing to another. The person who spends their nights watching endless content is not preparing for sleep. They are overloading their brain before shutting it down. Seneca saw this as a failure of self-control. He believed that the mind must be trained, not indulged. A person who cannot sit in silence, who cannot review their own thoughts, who cannot end the day with deliberate reflection, is a person who has become weak in their thinking. They do not engage with their own minds. They simply consume, react, and drift into unconsciousness without intention. Most people wonder why they wake up feeling mentally heavy. They assume they need more sleep, more relaxation, more leisure. But the truth is that their problem is not sleep. It is the way they enter sleep. They do not declutter their minds. They do not remove unnecessary thoughts. They do not end the day with order. They let distractions dictate their last moments, and then they expect to wake up with clarity. Marcus Aurelius understood that the mind carries into sleep what it is given before sleep. A person who feeds their mind with nonsense will dream nonsense. A person who fills their mind with useless information will wake up with mental fog. But a person who ends the day with reflection, with self-examination, with discipline, that person wakes up with a mind that is already in control. Most people do not realize that bedtime is the most important time for shaping the mind. The final thoughts before sleep are the thoughts that the subconscious works on. They are the thoughts that settle deepest. They are the thoughts that determine whether the mind wakes up sharp or dull, whether the day begins with direction or with distraction. Epictetus believed that a person's final moments of the day reveal the state of their mind. A person who needs noise before sleep is a person who has not yet learned to master their own thinking. A person who seeks entertainment rather than contemplation is a person who has not yet realized the power of mental stillness. Most people are afraid of silence. They avoid it because it forces them to confront themselves. They do not want to examine their choices, to review their failures, to sit with their own thoughts. They do not want to refine their minds. They just want to be distracted until they lose consciousness. But the Stoics knew that distraction is the enemy of wisdom. A mind that is always entertained is a mind that is never trained. Seneca believed that every night should end with a mental cleansing. A person should remove useless thoughts, reflect on what was done well, and identify what needs to be improved. The mind should not be left full of clutter. It should be organized, clear, and steady before sleep begins. Most people assume that entertainment is harmless. They believe that watching, scrolling, consuming before bed is just a way to relax. But the Stoics knew that the mind does not relax when it is being filled with distractions. It relaxes when it is given order, when it is directed, when it is controlled. Marcus Aurelius did not waste time before bed. He did not let his mind be hijacked by useless content. He did not fall asleep in a state of mental indulgence. He prepared himself for sleep the way he prepared himself for life, with deliberate focus. He cleared his thoughts, removed distractions, and ensured that his mind was free of unnecessary burdens. And because of this, he woke up ready, not sluggish. Most people believe that rest is about escape, but the Stoics knew that true rest is about alignment. The mind cannot rest when it is overstimulated. It cannot enter sleep in a state of disorder. It must be given a direction, a purpose, a moment to settle. Epictetus taught that the way a person ends their day determines the way they begin the next. A person who ends the night in distraction will begin the morning in distraction. A person who ends the night with reflection will begin the morning with clarity. Most people do not realize that their struggle with focus, with motivation, with mental sharpness is not a result of bad mornings. It is a result of bad nights. A person who cannot discipline their mind before bed will find that their mind does not obey them in the morning. A person who does not direct their thoughts before sleep will find that their thoughts control them throughout the day. Tonight, there is a choice: to end the day in distraction or in reflection, to let entertainment dictate the last thoughts before sleep or to take control of them, to enter the night in a state of chaos or in a state of peace. Because the way a person sleeps is the way they wake up, and the way they wake up is the way they live. Sleep is not just a break from the day, it is a continuation of discipline. It is where the mind either resets and strengthens or carries forward the chaos it was left in. The Stoics did not see sleep as something to be taken lightly. They trained themselves to rest with purpose, to release what does not serve them, and to wake up stronger than the night before. Mastery over sleep is mastery over the self. From preparing the mind for rest to letting go of what is outside control, from resisting indulgence to replacing distractions with reflection, every night is an opportunity to either sharpen the mind or dull it. Those who treat sleep carelessly will wake up tired, unmotivated, and weak. But those who enter it with order, intention, and clarity will wake up clear, energized, and prepared for life. Seneca warned against wasting time. And what is sleep, if not time? A person who trains themselves to rest efficiently, who eliminates unnecessary fears, who breathes with control, who treats their nights as seriously as their days, will find that they are unshaken, unburdened, and unbreakable. So tonight, ask yourself, will you drift into sleep mindlessly, or will you take control? Will you wake up the same, or will you wake up better? The choice is yours, and it begins the moment you close your eyes. If you made it this far, let me know in the comments by writing, "Strength begins at night," because those who discipline their nights discipline their lives. And if you want more insights that challenge your mind, refine your thinking, and push you toward a life of wisdom and control, subscribe now and hit the bell, because sleep is temporary, but mastery is forever.